All right, and welcome back to the Intrinsic Mind podcast. Geo here alongside Ray, of course. Today we have a very special guest joining us, and I'm glad to have the pleasure of introducing him, Brandon from Expanding Reality podcast. Now, I like this because Brandon has tons of experience with interviewing many different guests of proportionate backgrounds and expertise in many thought-provoking areas of topic. And wanting to have this talk with Brandon is because he has a very multi-dimensional, like skeptical, like a multi-dimensionality and skeptical and fringe topics, and also just a way of giving an expansive thought with anything that is presented to him. And we believe he also has a lot of good insight with many of the topics that we want to discuss here today. So we'll be sure to link down below where to find Brandon and all his content. But what's going on, Brandon? How's it going? And we appreciate you taking the time and letting everyone know where they could best find you too.
Dude, Gio and Jay, thank you so much. Yeah, expandingrealitypodcast.com. We make it super easy for you. Every other way that you'd want to go, I wonder if they're there. It links from there. So yes, we're probably there. You can find us on well over 40 something different podcast platforms. It goes out everywhere. So you can't throw a rock and not hit the show. But Expanding Reality it's the website is where all the other stuff is. There's a whole bonus platform associated with this thing. We're having a blast with it. So all of it's awesome. And I want to thank you gentlemen for having us on here. Also, for your audio only audience, I don't know how many folks take you up on the video version of this show, but for the audio only audience, I would like to say that Gio delivered that intro with perfect precision, non-distracted, with a boxer loving on him from the left, with an arm out the entire time,
guarding on me.
And it was beautiful. It was this wonderful moment. I'm grateful we shared it together, but just for the appreciation of the audio only audience, he nailed it.
Thank you.
A beast.
Loving
on him.
You just tickled his Virgo rising fancy.
Yeah,
I'm a Virgo sun. Yeah,
that's right. That's right. I forgot about that.
Virgo cool. Midheaven. I'm kind of there with you. It's my job to do Virgo things.
It's a good area to have that Virgo.
Yeah, we don't need a bunch of us. We need just the right amount of all of us to just kind of come together with our superpowers, like Captain Planet. Like you do the fire thing, I'll do the earth thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I'll bring the air. I'm bringing the air energy and the fire. Go. Yeah. Gemini, Sag rising. I'll bring the fire in the air. The exquisite but mind expanding questions, or just bring that energy of like, all right, we're getting fixed on the topic, let's move on.
Yeah Movement, kinetic.
Movement, right? There you go. Movement. Yeah,
that's it. Keep immutable. Yes. Right.
I was gonna say, well, I'm curious on where your journey began, Brandon.
Just what I was gonna ask.
What got you? What was the thing that propelled you into some sort of awakening, into saying, I have questions, life is crazy, it's also insane out there, I need to explore, I need to expand my mind? What got you? What was the trigger?
Man, it was a long time ago. Great question. And the shortest version I think I've come up with yet is that around the age of 17, at the age of 17 exactly, actually, in between my sophomore and junior year in high school, we moved from a small town in North Texas. It wasn't the country, but it was a smaller suburb, where the projected senior high graduating class, had I continued, was like 63, 65 people, right? So it was small. 3A is what we call it, right, in football standards. So then we up and moved from, in that summer, we moved and transplanted. And so I started my junior year of high school in Houston. It was this massive school, like 1,000 something graduating students, 10-minute passing periods, melting pot of culture. So a massive awakening that there were other people out there than what I grew up with. So it was this huge, like I was 17 years old, didn't even know what pot was. Like I knew what it was and didn't do it actively. I didn't know of it. It wasn't a thing. I felt like coming out of M. Night Shyamalan's movie, The Village. You guys ever seen that shit? They don't have flying over their houses and shit. Anyway. So that all occurred, which was a massive shock to my system. That was just cool. I was just riding it out. I was playing soccer. I was doing my thing. I was, pretty normal. I just started playing guitar like by ear just before I left Keller for Houston. And so I had like an electric guitar, but my teaching myself was like sitting in my closet with my guitar. I didn't have an amp, so it was just an electric, so it's real tiny, And so I'd sit there with a radio in as low as it would go, so my mom wouldn't hear it, right? Real Christian Baptist upbringing. And I liked like Offspring and Metallica and, Alice in Chains and shit like that. And she did not like that I liked that. So I kept it very, very quiet, kept it in my closet, and I would run to my closet anytime I was in there drawing or doing something Christian like I was supposed to. I'd fucking run in there when I'd hear like Metallica start playing Nothing Else Matters, and I would sit there and I would just listen as close as I could to the radio and just figure it out. So I taught myself by ear, and I taught myself quickly by ear, because I usually only had the 3 minutes and whatever it had to play. Otherwise, I had to wait until the next time it came on. So teaching myself music was starting to introduce that into my life. And that came from my grandmother. She was a piano player and gave me her music, interest and love in music. Big move down to Houston. Now, when that happened, one of my parents didn't take it well. And that was a big shock for them. And it exploded in a physical expression of their inability to reason with what was going on for the information that they had at the time. So this blew up in physical manifestations, meaning that we were getting struck. And by we, I mean I. And I kept it on me by staying the center of attention, because I figured, well, if it was happening at all, then I was going to keep it on me. Since I'd already taken a few blows, it was no big deal. But the better thing is to keep it off my brother. So I just really made sure that I was sort of like Dr. Grant when he was yelling at the T-Rex or whatever. Hey, come over here. I was like that for the last 2 years of high school with a lot of physical stuff. That then manifested into me being absolutely more rebellious, which again, I will say this, that parents and I are absolutely healed. Like it was a gift the day that days like it was a gift immediately, like an immediate gift of awareness of holy shit, thank you. It's one of those heavy gifts, because you're sad and you're angry and you're pissed, and I'm young and I have no fucking clue what's going on. And I'm not going to ever say that I handled this with grace throughout it. I was very drugged, throughout my 20s. And that leads to my second thing about this. But it was this thing to where, that's when the parent switches in your mind, and it's this whole different deal. But anyway, so it's a complete gift that absolutely we are all healed from. So I really want to say this without any judgment to anyone out there that may be feeling triggered by this and feeling that they need to take a side, and that this is a story in which that needs to occur. This is a done story. It's all over. But to answer your question, it was an intense time, because this also was a wake up for that parent, right? It's always these beautiful things, and you see them, but you need to be in them, right? So anyway, as I walked through that experience was interesting, because then I was taken. It manifested in dumb shit too. Like they found a journal of mine. I was like writing, and I was doing poems and shit. I'd just seen the Dead Poets Society with Robin Williams. Have you guys ever seen that movie?
Oh yeah.
Great movie.
Okay, so that was a huge inspiration for me. That's when I really started like reading poetry. I'm a 18-year-old kid reading Robert Frost and shit, because I saw this movie and was so inspired, moved by just the free thinking in it, and I thought that was the avenue, right? And so I was just trying anything. At an early, like in hindsight, now I see it as what it was. So that was occurring. Now at the same time, okay, so like dumb shit, like I said, they found the journal and took me. They said we were going out to eat. This is so stupid. Brothers in the car and everything, and my mom was holding something blue the whole time we were going up there. And so we didn't go out to eat. Spoiler alert. They were taking me to an insane asylum to get me committed. And I was like, okay. And the dude wouldn't even read it, because I was 18. He goes, can I read that? And I said, I'd rather you didn't. That was personal. Nobody was supposed to read it. That was just my personal thoughts. I don't have anything to do with reality. And he took it from her and handed it to me and said, okay, I don't know what you want me to do, but this dude's 18, so he can't do anything. And that, again, brought more physical violence. And so it was an interesting time again. This then culminated in me being very explorative with some mind-altering substances at that same exact time. Again, still a senior in high school. And I got introduced to Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, LSD, acid for everybody out there for the first time. And this was liquid acid. I took 2 hits. One of them was given to me on a sweet tart, one of those big-ass sweet tarts, the semi-chewy ones,
yeah,
4 to a pack. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So one of those, and he just dropped it on there, but it was like an eyedropper deal. And then he said, do you want it now? And the guy I was with that was buying it was like, you do want it now. And so I was like, yeah, I'm here for the ride. So I just keep saying yes. And they said, here, put one on my tongue. Now, about 30 minutes to an hour later, I am just realizing that this place is very different than what we've been told. And I started to dip my toe into this world of just wow, and this feeling, and a wow, and a wow, wow, wow. And then my cell phone rings, which is old as shit at the time. They were like these bricks, right? We're talking 2001. And so my phone rings or whatever, and it's my mom, and she goes, hey, I know that you'd planned to stay out this evening. I still lived at the house, but you need to come home immediately. And all pissed off. So that immediately sent me into a spiral trip, is what a bad trip, as they say, because I'd pop the second one immediately. I'm not waiting on the shit. Let's fucking go. Now, in the interim of this, my friend had rented a hotel. And so that was where we had planned to stay for the entire night. All right, we'll go to this hotel to be badass. Out all night, parents, alibis, all that good shit. There was the overpass awnings that go over a highway, and they have the big signs up top, and then they have little catwalks with the lights that shine up on the signs so you could see them at night over the highways and shit. Not a bridge, but like a fucking thing you're not supposed to get on. Tripping my ass off. 18-year-old me got up on that thing and was sitting up on it, dangling my feet and everything, realizing that the world was incredible and beautiful and feeling amazing and free and all of that shit. And then that's when I got the call. So I'm like shaking. I'm starting to get a horrible trip. I'm climbing down from this fucking thing. And then I get a ride home. I'm puking out of the side of my friend's car. And then this horrible, thing happened. Again, a very traumatic event with a parent, right? In this traumatic space where I was being physically assaulted for the first time. This was a new thing for me. So I thought that this just was the next phase of life, that this was just what was happening. I was going to be scared as fuck, not feel at home. So again, all of this is answering your question, I promise. And again, in the shortest way that I know how to do it.
No, I see
is to it opened me up to so many things, and you feel that your anchors of this world, just have betrayed you. At the exact same time, right before I left high school, I started, because I'm 18, I could serve alcohol, so I started waiting tables at Chili's, right, just around the highway, like right across from our high school. So I start waiting tables there, again, all in the same year. I get introduced by a table of mine, all synchronicity. I'll make this very short. And he invited me to question the narrative of what was going on in our society as far as authority figures go, government, education, all of these things. So I got introduced to conspiracy theories. And then 2001, 9/11 happened right after. Now, in the interim of this, right before that, 2 days after graduation in May, I just figured out psychedelics. I just learned that conspiracies were a fucking thing. I'm getting pounded on at home. 2 days after graduation, my grandmother's in town from Fort Worth visiting us in Houston, and it exploded in a way that my parent jumped on me, and it was in their room, on the bed and everything, just hit the fuck out of me first in my ear. You've ever seen Fight Club? You get hit in the ear. God damn it, man. It's the shittiest thing. Anyway, so hit in the ear, jumped on top of, and then began to choke me. And so you're looking at your parent and you're just like, oh, okay, this is fucking weird. And the grandmother ran in, pulled her off. And then it was this moment. And in that moment, I was like, okay, that's the straw, right? Ran upstairs, packed 2 bags of clothes and whatever I could, and threw that guitar in a case and walked. I had no car. So I just walked down the street, found a payphone. I called my girlfriend at the time who came and picked me up. And then that's a whole nother long road. But that period of time was one of the biggest impacts on the direction of my life, because it scrubbed me clean. It was this accelerated, here's a direction, kind of a thing. And it was just this insane car wash of just, what the fuck was this? This scrubbing, this cleansing. And it's just it was an interesting time. And like I said, completely healed, carry zero fucking burdens. I've experienced so many things, and really for the most part, seeing them as a gift, because around that, again, okay, so I skipped one thing in that same time period, right after I moved out in with the girlfriend, right after graduation, still 18, right before 9/11, I was handed the book Conversations with God by her, by Neil Donald Walsh. And so we're living together in her parents' house. And then we moved out, got our own apartment, and then 9/11 happened. Now, all this is, again, span of a year and some change. And so I was introduced to Conversations with God again by Neil Donald Walsh. So I'm starting to see this place as spiritual, which then connected to some psychedelic research I was doing. And that was a very interesting correlation. So I had this piece about it already, because having been introduced to that book, was the gift in that was the unity consciousness way of looking at things. I then was able to connect that to the philosophers of my personal philosophers of that time period, of this very important time. Right after I left my parents' house, I was in a band. I was running around. I was doing all sorts of crazy, anything I could get my hands on. I had the rule of no needle drugs. That was my rule. I stuck to it. Anything, but other than that, I was doing it, and I was doing the fuck out of it, right? And so it was just this whole journey, this whole time, this whole huge experience where everything came together. And it was, I mean, it's rad, you know, it's interesting. Definitely changed me. I mean, absolutely, completely changed me. So it set me on perceptions. And again, this is why with this new perception of spirituality, I could sit there and say, well, we're all one. It dovetailed into when Bill Hicks said, you know, what's going to happen to the arms industry when they realize we're all one? Because those were my philosophers. It was George Carlin, Bill Hicks. It was Dave Chappelle, his Killing Them Softly, his Washington, D.C. from 2000, I think, something like that, or late 90s. Dude, I listened to that. Absolutely. I could tell you every word in that thing. And again, Bill Hicks was a huge thing. That's why he opens the show, Choice Right Now Between Fear and Love. He was a philosopher in my mind. But again, the way he was able to deliver the message was an invitation to think. It just made you think. But the way that he did it was so appealing because he opened you up with laughter. He showed you that you can open up and then receive powerful information from a purer source. And I found this mode of conversation, this mode of communication, absolutely fascinating. So, and then the ideas itself were now marrying into things that were seemingly handed to me out of the blue, right? And so my whole idea of everything was just so malleable. But with that concept, you know, when you're looking into the eyes of another, you're looking into the eyes of you. You know, in that book, he talks about there is no hell, and this concept blew like I'm, you know, coming off a Baptist hangover. I'm like, okay, well, I know it's not that, but I don't know about atheism. And then I found this, and I'm just like, what the fuck? It just makes so much sense, right? So, all that to say that it changed a lot, and so it gave me lenses in which to view the world through, which I'm a big perception proponent. So I'm huge on perception, like talking about your reticular activating system and the double slit experiment, the placebos, like the way that your mind perceives reality. I mean, that's what it's all about for me. And I was gifted with a numerous amount of interesting situations to create this entourage effect that gives me the gift of being able to see this place through multiple lenses, unattached to rather they're real for me or not. Like I have no belief system wrapped up into it. I can view something and go, okay, cool. And then say, well, do you believe that's true? First of all, we go into the believe versus, you know, what I really think is going on here, which is just ideas. It's from a Kevin Smith film. I quote this all the time. It's Dogma. Have you guys ever seen Dogma about Kevin Smith?
Of course.
Okay.
Oh right, God, man, we're actually like
over to Gio.
Neighbors.
Let's do a watch party. Yeah,
we're neighbors with. I was, but we lived probably like 45 minutes from where they shot Clerks.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right.
So badass. Yeah. And it's one of these interesting Kevin Smith films because it's very suppressed. It was bought by, I want to say, Warner Brothers or Sony or something like that. It's the only one that's not ever been allowed to stream, to my understanding. You can find old bootleg copies of it on Amazon, which I bought one for like $20 and it skips. You know what I mean? So, but what I mean to say is, in that movie, I saw this years ago. This was 99. So I see it now like a roadmap. I look back and I say, oh, the psychedelic experiences I had. Oh, the music. Oh, the trauma, if you want to, I'm air quotes and all of that on that. If all of the things were like, oh, got it. Yes, they're useful now. And it's this fascinating thing. So I saw this movie. I happened to pick up this line that just stuck with me. There's a bunch of lines in that movie, right? If you look at the script per word pada, there's a bunch of lines in that bitch, right? Mm-hmm. And this one stuck with me. And it was the character Rufus, played by Chris Rock. And he says, you know, I don't have beliefs. I have ideas, because ideas are easier to change. And dude, I was just like, what? It killed me in the way that I was just like, hang on, that makes so much sense to me. So I throw the B word around, believe, very diligently. I'm when I say believe, like I can get things maybe on my one hand that I believe. And even that, I always put the believe caveat under that. I don't have cognitive dissonance, and that is first and foremost. So I'm always willing to change my mind. But again, this idea of being so invested in that idea for well over 20 years, guys. I've been looking at this place under the filter that I don't have beliefs. I have ideas, because ideas are easier to change. And I saw the folks that got stuck in beliefs, because that's how I saw it. I was like, a belief is just a tar pit that you get stuck in, because then something new might fly over you to pull you out of it, but you're like, nah, I can't grab it. I'm in this fucking tar pit. And that's one of those things. It's like, you know, the most dangerous sentence ever spoken by man is, well, that's the way we've always done it. And so when you look at things like this, the concept of beliefs, the concept of being anchored to positions that are inflexible, and rigid and just don't go with the natural order of things, which is flow and creativity and authenticity, then it's one of these things I've just it's allowed me to really again navigate this in a way that's been fun. And I've always put fun at the front of all of this shit. I'm here to fucking play, man, and I've known that forever. My role here on this earth, if I could sum it up into one fucking sentence, it says that I am here to give people back to themselves. That's it. And you do this through a myriad of ways and symbols, and you're a living allegory yourself by doing this.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
But it's that's what I embrace. So that's where I'm at. There's a bunch more, and you're getting kind of the Cliff Notes version, but as far as most impactful with the least amount of detail, there it is.
I like that. There's a lot of things you said that, wow, just like blew my mind, because a lot of it resonated too. And you know what? Where do I start with that? Because there's so much that you said, that especially the fact of even just what you find as the important thing or the important area of your life experience that you say is the crucial thing that brought you into this awareness. And it, from an outsider view, it can seem like a very dark time or a scary time and stuff like that. But that just goes to prove.
It felt like that from the inside of it too,
yes,
by the way. Yeah,
absolutely. When you're there in that moment, it seems it definitely does, because I have a very, very, very similar experience, certain background with things. And, I never knew that would be the caveat to where I am now. Like you even said too, a lot of things healed, even those same parental relationships healed, like beyond imaginable, that I never expected to get there and stuff. And it's just amazing how it just goes to show that it doesn't matter what's happened to you, where you come from, what disadvantages you may think you were at and stuff. It all comes down to your perspective and what you decide to do with what you've been given, what you've been presented and stuff, and to find a reason behind why this has been given to you. You're not dealt anything that you're not strong enough to carry and change in your life as well. And I just love that, because it's the story of perseverance, but perseverance through alternating perspective and stuff, and not being afraid. When yes, there may have been times of fear, obviously, but not being afraid to still test the boundaries, test the limits, change ideas, change perspectives, change beliefs. Beliefs are very mutable as well. Like but we can have this perception that it's like, no, my belief is rigid and I have to stick to it, and that's what it is, and tradition and all that stuff. And that could be a very, very limiting thing that keeps you stuck in a hole. So to see somebody's story like yours, and to even know my own, which I'm not even going to go into it. Another time, me and you, like, we could talk and stuff like that, about it and everything, because like I said, there's a lot of similarities, but
of course,
yeah, it's just more proof to me. And not saying that you have to go through trauma in this area, but one thing I've really realized, that people that have such wide range patience or acceptability within them when it comes to other people and other things and other ideas and stuff, a lot of times they've been through the most. They've gone through the ringer with a lot of things and have seen a lot of shit and stuff, and maybe not necessarily didn't have the cookie cutter lifestyle, as you could say. But those tend to also always somehow be very rational people, but also in the same sense, not rational to the point where they only stay within their confines and it's only about logical things only. No, like, they have a way of understanding potential feeling when maybe the other person that they're dealing with doesn't even know what they're feeling, but they won't force to tell them that, hey, this is what's going on with you, this is how you feel, so this is why you're acting like this. No, say it, you'll just kind of allow them to be, because you know that that person with their own faith, not belief, but with their own faith, their own perseverance, through their own perspective and through their own journey, that they may come into their own to see that. So yeah, there's so much more I could say on it, but I'll leave it at that. And I just got to say, I totally respect the journey, man.
Truly grateful for the observation. Thank you for sharing, because it's relatable in the sense that it builds resilience. And there's a wonderful analogy for we live out here on a ranch. We do a lot of like planting and shit like that, like trees. So like we just love plants and animals and stuff like that. My wife and I, we don't have kids. This is what we do. So we will grow things like indoors, but I'll know, come springtime when those good winds kick and it's got a little bit of like stick to it, we'll set it outside in the pot and let it get wind, let it get a little bit of torture. You let it get a little sun, you want it to gain resilience, because it won't survive in the wild if you don't. Same thing with our animals. We're very hands-on. We have donkeys, which have been fine for thousands of years without human intervention, but we do understand that we restrict their access in the form of a 10-acre piece of property that we let grow wild, that we let them eat on, and we only supplement hay in the winter. Now, we had different feeds, but again, very minimally. The reason that we do this is because, again, they're more fortified for the environment. If you give a horse, for instance, an open field after it's been fed for a long time, it'll do what they call fonder, and it can't adapt to the wild grasses. It gets too pampered, if you will, and it can't even survive on what it's naturally meant to survive on, right? And it takes this fortification, it takes resilience, and you must go through, if you want to look at it like that, you must hold on with your roots to a bunch of windstorms, and those can come in the forms of many different things, but they're just windstorms to reach your roots down. And that saying, a man can't reach to heaven unless his roots reach to hell. And to do that, you must be blown with a lot of wind. You must have animals coming by, chewing off your favorite part of yourself, your branch, and losing that for a little while and coming to terms with that feeling of loss of a piece of you. Just sticking with the metaphor, but it's all relevant. It's all as above, so below. We have examples of, we have examples of our architecture and the architecture of everything here all around us all the time, if you look for it. But I feel also that there's a system of distractions out here that's meant to be so, and meant to be loud and noisy, as for you to have the resilience to tune out, to then listen to the quiet voice inside of you that has all of the answers. It's a 24-hour news feed of the Akashic records, of your personal Akashic record, and you could tap into it any damn time you want. Now, I am not, I will say this, a woo-woo experiencer of sorts. I'm going to be very tiptoey around the words that I use here, because I am not ruling it out. I never have, and I don't ever consider myself as being not worthy of, absolutely not. But one thing I will say is I've felt that the way that I've experienced the phenomenon, especially with the shows, doing it for 2 years, it mainly started as UFO stuff. I'm not a contactee, let's say. I've not seen a ghost. I've not seen a UFO, but I'm fascinated by the topic. But what it has afforded me the lens of is a non-skewed perception, because I have a lack of specific interaction. So let me explain. I feel that I'm not meant to be a conscious interactor, even though maybe I'm like abducted, if you want to say that. Maybe I'm contacted and taken on a UFO every damn night in my life. But I am very, very convinced that because I know me, and because I know what I'm here to do at a very interesting level at this point in my life, that I know that I demand that they regress me, that they make me not remember, because I feel that it would skew my objectivity for the phenomena and my subject. I may continue to filter it through my personal experience, which I don't have. Therefore, I have no stake in the game. Therefore, when people come on, I don't have an ego presenting myself as correct and them incorrect. This is why I have the kind of show and conversations and attract the type of guests. Like, I'm a magnet for incredible people like you guys. That we're in vibration here. You're incredible. This makes sense. So with this comes this understanding that it's just an attractive aspect to it. And so with this, again, you empower people by giving them the space to do this, and by removing my ego from this, because expanding reality is a mission. It's been way bigger than me for a very long time now. And I've known this for a very long time. I just step me out of it. And then I'm able to sit there and go, oh, holy shit, you had this amazing experience. Like, you're mapping a piece of consciousness from my perspective. Like, you're out here as a little agent of us, as a drone, if you want to very reduce this thing, of us, of consciousness, exploring a part of the realm that I'm not, and you're seeing it in a way I'm not, and you're feeling it in a way and I'm not, and you've got all these metrics of which you're seeing this, and oh wow, you had this experience that had a really impactful, like ripple effect throughout your life, and I'd love to hear about it. Who am I to sit here and tell you that you're wrong? Number one, I wasn't fucking there. Number two, I don't know what's possible. Number three, I haven't had an experience, therefore to tell you that yours is different than mine, therefore incorrect. And even if it is different than mine, it doesn't make it incorrect. I'm to a place with it, gentlemen, that I really see this as a goddamn play, man. It's just a fucking game. And a lot of the folks out here, not all of them, of course, but they don't see that they're the actor playing the role. They're so great at the role. They've had so much prep. They've gone through actor training of feeling small and feeling powerless, like they're playing the fuck out of the role. But as I see it, that's boot camp for you to break out of it, like for you to figure out that it's not true, because you go from the scope so that you can ricochet forward. It's like that analogy of when you experience setback, excuse me, if you've experienced setback from your perspective, it perhaps can be viewed. I'm a boundless optimist. I've got tons of these. I'll give you a few. You're being pulled back in a bow, right? It's not setback. You're being pulled back in a bow. And in those moments, that's where you hold your aim. That's where your aim is the most important, because this is where you're being drawn back to release. And then inevitably it does. And you could always countermeasure these dips in your experience with these huge level ups after, because there's this like this swing, but it's a 10x swing. It's like a small little dip to 10x propel. It's this fascinating thing. And when you feel these swings and you dance in it, you can see it that way. Now, what the game tells you is that you should fight these things, and there should be a rigid structure that doesn't involve flow, and that, as far as the metaphor goes, you close all your windows so flow can't occur. And then when it does, it shakes your house and it scares you because you're not used to it, right? And so there's these, again, interesting ways of sort of glancing around at this place, and that's one of them. Now, there's a mirror example I would not mind bringing up and sharing screen and showing you guys to something you were saying about seeing your reality in yourself, something you were saying a minute ago, Gio. If you don't mind, does that sound good to you guys?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's go.
Okay, so I had a gentleman on named Peter Shampoo. Here, let's just share this while I scroll around. This could be just guerrilla style on the fly here, so nothing pre-prepared here, but here we are. Okay, so I had an episode with a gentleman named Peter Shampoo. This guy is awesome. Now, he is a geomancy guy. His books are right here behind me. He's written 3 books, and they're amazing. Like, the attention to detail this dude plays, because I have a publishing house as well, so I'm a nerd about books and all how you present to the reader and all that shit. What he'll do is he puts writing on the left side of the pages, text on the left, and images on the right, because that's the way your brain perceives reality, right? Creative and then textual. You know what I'm saying? So even the thought he puts into how the reader's experience of this is awesome. Okay, so this dude came on, killed, right? Now, when the episode came out, this was episode 98. I don't remember when this was. It was a minute. It was a while back. Whenever he came on, I mispronounced his name in the intro, I think a couple of times, and maybe once in the episode. Anyway, a couple of times I mispronounced his name. I said it like Shampro or something like that. Now, the only time I'm going to defend myself on this is I hadn't heard it pronounced. Well, no, that's not true. I had heard it pronounced, but multiple ways and never corrected. There were at least 4 different pronunciations. I investigated this dude ahead of time. I was like, dude. And so I really did a lot of work on making sure I pronounced his name correctly, and then didn't. And then the result is something I'm going to show you now. So Peter Shampoo, Pro or whatever is what I was saying. Now I'm right next to Louisiana. So when I see P-O-U-X, I think Cajun. Okay, but it's not.
Yeah,
he even said
that I'm not going to lie, though. I did think the same thing, even though I was told how to say it. I also thought, I was like, no, I don't think that's how you say it. And I was saying, because I remember watching the video, so I remember how you apparently mispronounced it, and I was like, but I feel like that's right. So I'm with you on that.
And I appreciate that. And what it was I'm excited to talk to this dude. I'm 98, and I'm pumped. This guy's fascinating. I'm already a fan of him I hadn't even started the publishing house yet, so I'm so all the things, right? We all get here sometimes. So With this, though, and mispronouncing his name ahead of the episode release, I knew it was already scheduled to be released. It was ready to go. This was like a day or two before. And so I wasn't in the position I felt to go in and change all of it. Plus, it was already in the episode itself, which I don't edit content. I only edit for audio quality, for presentation. That's it. So I wasn't going to edit myself being myself because, and I'll tell you why, this led to the most beautiful fucking thing. I hope it comes across this way. So I wrote him an email and I said, Peter Shampoo, I said, I want to just let you know that here's the links to your episode. It'll be out on this day. I really want to thank you for coming on, but also apologize profusely for mentioning your name wrong, pronouncing it wrong. I meant no disrespect. I just want you to let you know, blah, blah, blah. He wrote a sweet email back. This man's a joy. You guys have got to have him on. He wrote this sweet email back and said, you know what? Don't worry about it. He goes, the way that my name is written and pronounced isn't correct in the English language, like some crazy, like amazing, beautiful shit, right? And that's why, of course, he never corrects anyone in the other 512 pronunciations I'd heard of it. Now, this did, though, get the attention of one of my audience members, and I'll just read this to you right now. And this is not to call this gentleman out, but another thing about me, I don't delete comments. I have no engagement. For the most part, I fuck all for engagement with this. I don't care.
Right
and
with you on that.
By not care, I am just as, if I give a shit about this one, I have to give a shit about the fact that I give a shit. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So it's an extra step and scalable where this is now and where it's absolutely going and inevitably, it's not manageable for me at any scale. I'm not going to pay someone to say, right? So what I'm saying is I don't look at these, nor do I delete them. And I'll tell you why. Since 18, I've looked at everyone out here as I've been looking in the eyes of myself. Now, I've also was just introduced at drop of this episode, maybe a week or two before. I was on a Zoom call. My friend Mira Taylor and I would just get on these like 2-hour Zoom calls. We'd fucking swap music. We'd go deep as shit into archetypes and all kinds of stuff. Just and not record it. We'd just hang out. And so we were speaking on the subject of that the world is a mirror to you, like to your subconscious, right? And this was the first time this was introduced to me. I was blown away by this shit. And she said, yeah, it's this idea that what you're experiencing and what you are is what you attract. So then we, get into manifestation on this, and we took it pretty far. So I just was so fresh on this idea of that the universe is a mirror to you. So what you experience out there is really a piece of you manifesting. Now, again, I connected this immediately to that every time I look in the eyes of another, I'm looking at the eyes of myself. So therefore, if you come across something that's an unhealed version of you presenting itself to you as an opportunity to be a grander version of yourself. So I get this comment. And if you guys have been sitting here again, it's been up for a year. Here's 1 year ago. It's been up. I don't delete comments. Here's what the comment was from Mr. Peter Slavin, is what I'm going to pronounce his name as. I think pronouncing the guest name incorrectly over and over largely negates the laid on thick flattery. You do an author no favors if listeners are not knowing his name, are left not knowing his name. It is not as if it is difficult for an American to pronounce it correctly. Just say shampoo and you'll be close enough. And shampoo is actually okay. And shampoo actually says it himself near the beginning of the interview. Okay. So this is basically the man railing me for the thing that I'd already emailed the guy about. I was already self-conscious about. You boys do this. How many things go into producing a show? A lot. On your mind is production, lighting, audio quality, release, hashtags, fucking graphics, fucking thumbnails, there are oodles for the listener's backstory here. There are oodles and oodles of things that we are mindful of in this process. Way more than just hitting record and saying, how you doing? And fart joke, right?
Yep.
So with this, then, out of all of the things that I'm mindful of in this process, even down to make sure that little lamp's got a light in it and doesn't go out during the middle of the show, this was the comment that popped up. The thing I was already conscious of. I'd already lamented over. I'd beat myself up over this, guys. I wrote the guy an email, already very sweet, should have been cleared from my mind. Release the episode. This is manifested. Same day of release. So I go to Stuart Pierce. Stuart Pierce is awesome. Have you guys ever, I'm going to do this without, okay. Stuart Pierce is badass. Have you ever heard of him? He's the alchemy of voice. This dude's got a fucking voice. I'm going to just play this. This is my shit, so I can copyright it to you. It's fine. All right. What are we doing here? YouTube, get out of here. Okay. Audio only audience. Check the link in the show notes for the video version. Listen to this dude's voice.
Me to say goodbye when she was going on holiday. This was July of 1997. You know, the early part of July.
Okay.
And I have to say,
making love to my ears.
Bro, right? So he's called the alchemy of voice. This dude's taught Shakespeare and like all the shays, friends with Princess Diana. He spent the last 2 years of her life with her. He wrote a book about her and like he's fucking incredible. He's cool as shit. Anyway, so this dude on this episode 112. Okay, now Mr. Shampoo's episode was 98. Okay, so 14 episodes later over here. We are sitting here looking at Mr. Stuart Pierce. On this episode, I bring this up. I said, you know, a funny thing happened a while back. I had a guy named Peter Shampoo on. I was getting introduced to this concept of mirror versions. I explained the whole thing to him, and I said, isn't it interesting? And even in there, y'all can listen to this. All of it's up for all of this. I say something to the effect of like, you know, and I send him well. I don't, you know, hate him or anything, but it felt like a mirrored version of me that I needed to heal. And it was already something I was thinking of, blah, 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 blah. So 14 episodes later, I then go down to the comment section and what do we have here?
There he is. There's Peter Slavin. He's back.
Mr.
Real quick, Ray. How funny
I know.
is it?
I've been laughing, dude, to myself real quick, just quick sidebar.
Go ahead.
We had a guy named Peter Smith recently comment on our video because Gio's name is Gio D'Angelo. So as a joke for the longest time, we've referenced him as G-O-D, being Gio D'Angelo. And the guy actually took offense to the fact that he thought Gio was referencing himself as God and calling himself a god. And his name was Peter Smith. You know, Peter Slavin, Peter Smith, trolling. Yeah. You know,
both apostles, by the way.
Hey, so I was just thinking that.
We'll get back to it. So, but there was something in you that made you feel that way, and I'll prove this here to you in just a second. Because again, it was all in my mind that I was thinking of that anyway. It was the one fucking thing I was thinking about, and this was so specific. It needed to be this clear and specific. It needed to hit me where it did for me to think about this and remember this. Okay, so Mr. Slavin comes back 1 year again to comment on this 14 episodes later, which meant he stuck around. He didn't like bail or anything like that. He's a listener and a sweetheart. So here's what he writes on that in response to me bringing it up. Lovely interview with a very beautiful soul, but I am writing to apologize from the bottom of my heart for the meanness of my content about a comment about the pronunciation of Peter Shampoo's name. Its harshness was a product of my own despair and self-doubt.
Wow.
And the comment did not reflect my larger opinion of this podcast and the host's efforts, which I regard as, in many ways, the best in the space. So I'm very glad that my poison was transmuted into a tonic, which is just another sign of the remarkably, even unequivocally wonderful qualities that the host brings. Another thing I want to point out to anyone listening here is that this was 14 episodes later. This man, think of the vulnerability it took for this guy to do this. Now, this isn't an internet troll. Neither was he when he was commenting on it originally. This is an unhealed version of ourselves. And I saw it as this immediately because I see this because I'm all there is, right? And so when I saw this, I was thinking, first of all, if I delete this comment, this man is obviously reaching out and wants to be heard. He has a voice. He has an opinion on something. And perhaps I'm the only one that he's expressed it to. And that if I'm the only one that he's expressed it to, maybe shutting him down would then send him into some crazy, who knows, right? But furthermore, anything like this, it's not a shot at you, how I view it. I'm always speaking from my perspective. That's all I'm going to give you. How I view it is this has nothing to do with him. This had everything to do with me. But when I came to the understanding and peace with it, he wrote an email back saying he had done the same. I've lately been really, again, playing with this stuff of that, yes, it's a mirror, but to what degree? So one thing before I make that point is that I want to everybody to notice my audience as well. Okay. A lot of engagement up and down. Okay. If you look at the original comment, we have a lot of engagement from everybody. Okay. Everybody's a great episode. All the love, all the love, all the love. Now we get down to this one. What do you notice with that comment?
No engagement.
Fuck all. Yep. No engagement, which is honestly my biggest recommendation with this. Don't take it down.
Dude, this is so relevant, by the way, because me and I can continue, dude. It's so relevant. I'll elaborate. I'll elaborate why. Go ahead. Continue. I don't want to ruin your flow. Go ahead.
No, you're not. Not at all. I love this. So it has 0 likes. It has 0 dislikes. It has no comments. Nobody replied going like, "Oh, what the fuck, buddy?" It is not worthy of engagement, meaning that not that it's worth less, because obviously the man has something to say and it stayed there as its value. But who am I to come in and curate this shit? Again, it's not scalable, but at a deeper level, beyond the laziness, which it's not. It says to me that this person knows that they have a voice here. Now, there's some shit, right, that I'm not a vibrational match for, that obviously, if it was there, I would take it down. But again, I'm not a vibrational match for it. This comment, and I think that's it, and I've been doing the show for 2 years, this is about the most harsh thing I've seen. I'm not a vibrational match for that. Therefore, I don't experience it. So again, this has fuck all for likes, engagements, replies. Nobody jumped on this dude because that's my audience. They understand, number one, I don't need to be protected. Number two, that if I left it for a reason. Therefore, I don't need, right? They don't need to feel that they need to jump in and protect me. The other thing to this, if you go over to Stewart's, if you look at his reply here and his vulnerability, look at that. Engagement, love, comments, everyone liking it. Look at how it blends in beautifully in harmony, even aesthetically, with the rest of everything else. This has a beautiful quality to it. I am more proud of this man. This is going to be a TED Talk someday, by the way. And I'm going to put this dude in the front row and give him a jetpack to fly out of there or something. High five me on the way out. I am so proud of this dude for doing this. And I'm so grateful that he gave us the gift of this example. Because again, now you say, okay, well, if I say that I'm shadow banned, am I really shadow banned, or am I shadow banned because I say I'm shadow banned? I'm not shadow banned. And it's because I don't believe in it. I don't think it's a thing. And so therefore,
beautiful.
I don't fuck with it. The C word, I don't know how far you guys go with this. It was a thing for me. Therefore, I was 0% affected by it. You get to choose this shit. And examples like this, especially public ones, are awesome because they really show you this in a big way. And now for me to be able to share with you from the perspective of the entire event, that's how it is. So you may, scroll through the YouTube and see a comment and go, huh, that sucks or whatever. Or that's how I feel about that. And then see it and think nothing of it. But this is where the two connect on episode 98 and 112 and also episode 112. So this bit of this comes back to this mirror version of you. And now I really want to hear what you guys are talking about. So please.
Okay.
Well, all right. So, real quick, because we had a post recently, and this was aimed towards me, that some spiritual lady who had a channel was listening to a short that I had put up from our podcast, and it was me talking. Now, you asked how old I was. I don't know how old you assumed I am, but I have a very youthful look. Like, I look like I'm young. I sound like I'm young. It just is what it is. So a lot of people will portray me as, what the hell does this kid know? He's a kid. And that's kind of what the comment was portraying. Like, what do you have to teach me? You look like you're 19. Like,
yeah, what life experience do you have?
What life experience do you have? Let alone I've lost my father. Hurricane Sandy took my house. I've had a lot of death in the family. I'm basically a father figure and older brother figure to my siblings. Like, I have a lot of things that have happened, like we all have. I've had my catalyst moments. I'm, on a journey like everyone else. And especially if I'm in this realm, yeah, I've had experience, because I wouldn't be thinking this way. I mean, I think the proof's in the pudding with anybody who has stepped in this field, that if you are talking about this and you have ended up here in this expanded consciousness, searching for something, basic mundane life isn't good enough for you. How could you assume that I don't know anything or that I have no experience? So anyway, I see how you just explained that is how I kind of had seen it. Like, I think of energy chords and I think of frequency. I read a book by Penny Pierce called Frequency. And I've always thought to myself, I'm like, if I engage in this, I now have created an energetic cord that's going to plug into me. And now it's going to mirror back. I'm going to see more and more and more of it. It's going to be like this momentum factor. And that's how I see it all. And Ray did stress to me, and go ahead. And I'm not trying to put Geo, by the way, on the spot. No, go ahead. I mean, in his astrological build, Mercury Aries in the 7th house, he's going to fight for friends. A little fiery. He's going to Mercury Aries. He's going to fight the war with his Mercury, with his communication. But I was also very professional and very. You were very Virgo about it. You were very Virgo about it. It was Virgo. It was exquisite criticism, and it was to the point. And he didn't. he wasn't Aryan in the way that he had come at this lady. It was more so the fact that it's like, you know, like look at you, like he made her look stupid in a way by responding in this like, how could you be this spiritual person? Gio, reiterate.
Yeah, I basically I said to her, I go, it's funny coming from you, somebody is older of experience. I go, and somebody who is a spiritual community and has a voice and everything. I was like, how naive can you be and ignorant can you be to be able to think that somebody's life and their experiences and what shaped them and enough to give them a voice. I go, when you're talking about basically somebody, talking about people standing up for themselves, giving themselves their own voice and everything, basically along those lines, and just saying, it's like, and that's basically all I said was like, you don't know anything about one of us. And it's funny because I also knew, so this is where, and this is going to connect to even the other comment that was about me, but what you said was, even through that, I guess the reason why I felt to actually even not ignore it was because of the fact too that it wasn't even about me, but in a sort of sense it was a mirror to me, because in my sense I also looked at myself. I known Ray since high school. Like I've known, and I may know things about him and his experiences, and that says enough alone. But even then, I know that I don't even know what he's really experienced. So, but I was looking at it still as a standpoint, because you're giving me this perspective too by what you said, Brandon, but is that, holy shit, I may look like somebody, especially now, like I may look like I got things together and all that stuff and shit's okay in my life and all of that. But like nobody really knows and wouldn't be able to look from the outside to see what I've really gone through and anything. And so like, I guess, so yeah, in a way there was this weird triangular mirroring going on of Ray, but also this woman who I know was like a defector of another spiritual teacher's community who also bashes him. And I saw it as more so, and this is why I didn't come at her with like the fire of 1,000 suns, was also because of the sense that I was like, I don't think this person is completely okay in the mind. They seem like somebody tends to be a little erratic with their emotions and their thoughts, and it's probably on the outskirts. And you know what? This is just their free form of expression and need. They felt the need in some sort of way to kind of say something in some sort of sense, and something allowed them to be justified. And I don't, and who am I to judge the way she's judging what our experience may be? How am I to judge her experience of what she may be going through that day, let alone that day? She could be having some sort of frustration, some sort of thing. Yes, it's ill projected. Absolutely. There's no justification of her projection, but I understand that. So, of course, I'm just going to, whereas Ray was just like, I felt no need to feed into that energy. And I was like, absolutely, I agree with you. But my thing was just that I was like, I feel a need to clarify, just because I feel like in a sort of sense, with what we're trying to do, to also hold people accountable too. Don't be a letter of the minister of the letter. Don't just say one thing. Actually practice what you preach too. And just by giving one little innocent comment back, that's the notion. But it's funny though how when I'm saying how as it connects to the comment about me and stuff too, was it's weird because now that I think about it, it is a mirror thing that I see within myself, because as I even explained on a further episode after that comment, because I brought it up, was that it was a nickname that I was given in high school. And I remember there was a very football friend of ours in school that when because it was God, he used to be like, yo, what up, God? What up, God? And he used to constantly say that. And I remember, and I came from a Christian background too, something about it made me uncomfortable. And I used to always be like, yo, stop, don't do that. Like, don't call me that. Like, come on, like laughing it off, but like, don't call me that, in a sort of sense. but also in the same sense, like it was like, well, should you allow that? Should you have some sort of, I wasn't somebody who had much of an ego and needed to use my ego to my defense, and I never really did. So it was like this weird confliction within me. But at the time too, I also, given the space that we're in and what we're trying to do, the reason why, even with that comment, that I felt to respond back, which once again, I didn't respond back in some derogatory way. And, like I see a lot of these channels and true channels do and stuff, like they'll call people vulgar names and stuff back. And, and I just don't see the need for that at all. Absolutely not. But my thing was to clarify, not for his sake, but for who may potentially read that comment. I don't necessarily know. We don't necessarily know our audience just yet. We're in that process, and I definitely don't want anybody thinking that there's some sort of God complex going on. So that was the only thing that I felt the need to address and stuff too. But also, once again, that's also something to always address within yourself, because even in that case scenario, to me afterwards is just like, it made me remember what I was doing too, to be like, hey, no matter where things turn with where you take life, where you take this podcast, where you take anything, where you take your studies, make sure you always remain in that space of being loving, being humble, forgiven, being compassionate and stuff. And like, it was just a good refresher and a good reminder too.
Yeah, and it real quick, and it led me to, and it's funny, I found, because I'm learning how to learn too, because I have a lot of information I want to retain and all that. And then I thought, because I used to call, by the way, my audio engineering thing Paradigms Productions, because I got obsessed. I was listening to a lot of Bob Proctor, and I'm like, Paradigm. I'm like, oh my God, I've just put a YMZ at the end. It makes it urban and hip. So let's make Paradigms Productions. Anyway, I didn't go with it, by the way. I went with Blue Evolution because I'm a big Dragon Ball fan. So I was like, I'm going to go with the Vegeta name for my productions company. But anyway.
Still solid.
Oh, yeah, dude. Blue Evo, right? Come record a Blue Evo. But yeah, like I started thinking, I go, wait a minute. So everyone has mental frameworks. Frameworks has been my word of the week lately. And I go, everyone has a paradigm which they work in. And it's like that set beliefs that you have. And there's that funny word beliefs, right? But we're stuck in this paradigm if we're not malleable and we are fixed and all that. But what framework are you even coming from? And so for me, it's like, if you're labeling things and you're immediately coming in and you've boxed yourself in this cube, this framework of this is how I see this type of person, or this is how I see this type of podcast or this topic, that's the way I see a lot of people, is that, look, they just have a framework. They just have a paradigm that they have sunk into. And if I play into that, and if I play into that energy, I'm just going to have to face that energy more. So why let it heal itself in a way? I get that there comes a point where you do have to stand up and you have to say something if you're going to do it the way Gio did it, it's just like, hey, there's no emotion here. Let me just let you know that there might be a fault in the way you're seeing it, but you can also take it as I might be wrong. Either way, you have the freedom to think whatever you'd like. And I'm with that.
And that's the thing. We're just like you. Like, we're not about removing that. We know that that plays into the engagement algorithm. So we don't give a shit. And that's the thing. It was not removed. I don't want to remove it, because that's the thing. It's like, you chose to say those words. Now you have to deal with the repercussions of that, whichever way somebody reads it. Even if they take it into perspective of which they agree with you, that's fine. But like, we're also in that same sense. Like, I'm not about censoring. That goes against everything. That if there's probably one belief, it's censorship. I'm not about that. So like, that's why we're not going to take that off. But another thing that I just do want to say real quick that does play into this, which is funny, that through what you were saying, I noticed where I have more of that that I actually practice what I preach with what you were saying, as far as something along those lines, is, believe it or not, I do that more so at work. And I would like to apply that in other areas of my life, because at work, I'm in the service industry. I deal with all different types of people, and people that try to flex their authoritarian muscle and stuff. But my thing is always, when I'm confronted with those people that all of a sudden want to get in a bunch about something and stuff, I just sit there. One, I remember that this person has no idea what my job is. This person has no idea. If they were in my position, you know, they would understand. So don't take it personally, one, because they would get it if they were actually in my position and they understood. Two, this says more about them than it does about me, and it doesn't need my reaction, because the way I look at it sometimes is this may be somebody who doesn't have that sort of authority in their own life, who doesn't have necessarily something that allows that compassion or that understanding to occur and stuff, or they may jump on opportunities to kind of flex some sort of like, well, this is my moment to shine and say what I think, and they may have some other stresses in their life. And to me, that's where my compassion starts to rise up, because where I'm just like, oh, this person is potentially dealing with some inner authoritarian stuff. Maybe they don't have the authority in their own life, so therefore they need to flex it. And I talked about this on our podcast before, is where I think that was one of the first psychological things that happened during the pandemic and everything, was there was a lot of people that decided to take on that role, take on that archetype of the authoritarian, and decided to make it their mission because of the fact that it was something that they could cling to, because they didn't have necessarily an identity of their own, especially when we were faced with the fact of any identity that you thought that you had is kind of obsolete right now. You know, it didn't matter who you were at the time, doctor, nurse, waiter, anything. Everybody was kind of pretty much riding the same seas at the time, maybe different vessels and different boats and stuff like that, but everybody was riding the same seas. And we all kind of had to be hit with the face, the reality of being like, well, shit, kind of doesn't matter who the fuck I am anymore. Like I can't necessarily just identify with my job anymore. So I start taking that into consideration at work, and I notice that it always does something good for me. I always get a good outcome. The people change their attitudes. I don't ever get upset about it and stuff too. And, you know, I remain composed, and I'm like, man, I was like, if I could just apply that in other areas of my life, I'd be good. And I think the only reason I could do it that good is because I've been doing this for so long, but it needs to carry over. But it's just like you said, there is a mirror. You have to see, maybe there was times in your own life where you maybe had that moment where you just kind of had that outlash, or you're just, you know, kind of, you know, and but also of just the fact of just feeding into it, you're going to get it. If you're expecting that to happen, you know, it's the law of assumption.
It's like a boomerang. Always. Mm-hmm. It always comes back to and the mirror effect. So, and obviously you say you're living by that principle. Have you noticed in your life, the more you've recognized the mirror, that it tends to show up more and more and more and more? Because that's what I noticed once I've accepted something into my own framework. And by the way, I don't know if you've ever read Reality Transurfing. Do you know of that? Mm-mm. Oh, I have a PDF. I wish
if you want to send it to me, that'd be great.
I will say, but that's where I got the idea of the mirror effect. And the way that the book explains it is that the space of variations is basically like the Akashic, right? It's like a grid, and we tune ourselves into these certain realities. Like, it's not like the law of attraction where you're bringing in things into your life. You're actually tuning into that level where that thing actually already exists. Written by a quantum physicist, by the way. So he has that outlook. And I've noticed that once you've dropped your guard and you've let things into your paradigm, you start to see these things more, whether it is a lesson to learn about the emotional interaction with people on the internet or other and allowing them to express themselves. As soon as you let your guard down and you kind of integrate things in, how much of it is it like you notice that these things start to shift and change in your life? Because in mine, it has always shown up basically right away because I'm so open-minded.
It's a variety of ways and a variety of timings, and all the ways in which it presents itself are in order of the things I need to clear to get to the next thing. So they'll present themselves as resistance first, and then that's always an opportunity. I view it as an opportunity to be a grander version of myself. I see this in every moment. And so when you ask about the mirror version, do I see it? I filter this world through a lot of lenses. One of the more consistent ones is that one of the more consistent ways in which able to really tap into the empathy is number one, to see everybody here as me, but also whatever I'm seeing in them as a reflection of what I'm currently holding in me. And it's just manifest in front of me. It's just a physical example of what I have an opportunity to clear to be a greater, grander version of myself. And you get these constantly. Somebody flips you off, somebody cuts you off in traffic, any of those times. So it's always a moment. I see it as an opportunity, again, to alchemize in that moment if it presents itself as something you'd prefer it not. So let's say, for example, do y'all mind if I interpret what I heard about this story about the YouTube comment real quick?
Yeah. Would love to hear it. Yeah.
How long ago was this that it occurred?
2-3 episodes ago.
Both of those, past few weeks.
Past last month.
Okay, so pretty fresh. How long before you responded to the comment about Jay's baby face?
Probably, definitely wasn't immediate. Probably about a day or two.
What I'm interpreting from this is, and it's my perspective, which is all I can offer. Have you guys ever read any Carlos Castaneda, when he talks about Don Juan and A Separate Reality and the Tales from Don Juan, or any of that stuff?
I've yet to read a book front to back. I know of the workings. I know what it's about. Yeah.
One of the things he talks about in there, and you can go, I mean, we could filter this conversation through the simulation theory with NPCs. You can filter this through allies being in the form of animal spirits, as Carlos Castaneda, Don Juan would have called them, many things. But how I view comments like that, and what I saw in Mr. Peter Slavin, there was an unhealed version of me. It was an insecurity of mine that I projected onto my reality. It just happened to be in a YouTube comment, but I recognized it right away. It had this signature. It has this frequency to it. And I was like, oh, that's me. That's me talking because of my insecurities, because that was an obvious thing to me. And then when I came to the realization about that, so did Peter Slavin, this character, this NPC, if you want to put it in my reality, because I no longer needed to carry it within me. Now, I also don't respond to comments, and here's why. The way that I feel that energy prefers to be engaged with is with, first of all, to engage with that energy from my perspective, it comes at that frequency level, and it's not where I am. It's where it's a frequency that resonates within me at a very small vibration that is making the harmony within me out of tune. It's an out of sync instrument. It's an out of tune violin in the orchestra. And this presents itself in this way for me to correct. This is just how I view it. So whenever something like this pops up, again, somebody pissed off at you, traffic, so your family member coming at you, family is sort of a different dynamic. I really see that as a growth center. So let's just extrapolate to strangers or anyone in your reality, even friends, shit like that. So when I started looking at it like this, I was seeing this as like, oh, that's a piece of me. And then immediately when I healed it in me, it responded by healing itself here. So it was cause and effect. And it was very immediate and in such a way that I couldn't help but see it this way. And so again, once I realized it for that, that was the realization of it, the non-engagement with it at its frequency, because that puts me out of tune. That takes me off of the conductor stand. I have to walk over there and adjust the tuning of that for that instrument, which means I'm not leading the rest of the orchestra, which means I have a little bit of potential disharmony going. The dude on cymbals is fucking haywire, dude. He needs, you know what I'm saying? So there's a mindfulness that goes with being a CEO of your life. And when you look at something like this and you pay it a lot of attention, the rest of the orchestra doesn't know where to go. And so you will find that you'll create a cascade of chaos, if you want to put it that way. But what I realized from this, or the lesson I took from it, which again, all I can offer, is the opportunity to not engage at its level, meaning not jump off of my podium and go over there and correct it, but to see it and to recognize it, because all I need to do to adjust the tuning of any instrument or the performance of any instrument in my orchestra is go identify it. There it is. Yeah, it's that violin right there. Got it. It's in tune, and it's in tune. And now we're back. It's that easy. Now, had I have gotten off the podium, commented back to this person, I've written out, early on, man, there were 1 or 2 comments that I wrote out everything I was going to do to their mom and erased it before I hit send. And then I wrote out every reason why they were wrong, and I was absolutely correct, because I was absolutely correct, and deleted it. And then I wrote down all it. So they were cathartic. They were for me, but I never hit send because that would have been taking me, from my perspective, that would have been taking me off of the podium to walk over there. And I knew that my attention on that little thing is part of a bigger thing. It's the tip of the iceberg. It's never about the thing. And I've looked at this. This has been the deep thing. It's always that iceberg at the top, the thing reveals the underneath, the gift, which is underneath it, right? So with this, again, it showed me that you're the conductor of this orchestra, that by putting a lot of focus on something that was a mirror to me anyway, by greeting it with a certain energy at its frequency, that was missing the mark as far as the opportunity for me, in my mind, to be a greater version of myself in that moment. So what I decided to do, not engage at all. I didn't engage with the frequency at all. No likes, no comments, no replies, no matter how eloquent. And I'm a writer. I can write. I had eloquent points of everything. But again, I looked back at it and said, that's an unhealed version of me. Now, would I want to receive something like that? Or could I even receive the information? Because obviously, if I didn't craft that myself or even wrote to begin with from this frequency, I don't have the understandings contained within to comprehend the understandings contained within. No matter how eloquent they were, I'm not at the same reading level from this commenter's perspective, from this unhealed version of me's perspective. It doesn't read at the same level I do. It doesn't read at the understanding of the comment. So how I'm interpreting this, and with all love and respect, is that you, Jay, already had an insecurity about your baby face being a questionable element to the presentation of the validity of your mission. And this was already something stuck within you because the way you presented it when you spoke about it a minute ago was that people always blah, blah, my face, right? So you have this already ingrained expectation of you for it to be a piece of resistance. And so therefore it manifested in your life. Now, the other thing to this is Gio, your partner, your sidekick, your ride or die, as well-intentioned as he is, hops in, not as a means that you can't take care of yourself. It's got nothing to do with that. It's a pack mentality. You guys are a team. So you hop in and you craft this beautifully eloquent thing, but it was also an opportunity for you to be a greater version of yourself, to address the fact that this has been on Jay's mind, and then to let him know and free himself from it so that it doesn't manifest anymore. So this is the way I interpret this. When I see things, I'm going to point out there, but what I mean is out there, I see them as me. And so I then take the opportunity, because also the way I see like healing your ancestor, like healing any part of you, like healing your past, like trauma and shit like this, let's say the upbringing, whatever, you're at any point in your life you are right now, you're the spirit guide for any one of you behind you. So if you look at that, but if you take it then to scale, just sort of the way I view things is as this mirror, then you say that thank God that it pops up like this, because the insecurities in me, I don't have to fumble around for. They're not hidden. They're right here in my face all the time. All I have to do is have the eyes and love and awareness to see them that way, heal from them, and boom, level unlocked, achievement. Your orchestra is back in tune. But again, with this, I see it as an opportunity to be what I would want to be responded to. So if I bash on this dude, again, no matter how eloquent, it misses the mark for what I'm here to do, which is to empower people, to give them back to themselves, and to be an example, to be a lighthouse of what's possible here.
Beautiful.
This is how I see it, guys. And it's taken a minute to get here, but here we are. And this is ever evolving and ever changing. I mean, this could be bullshit in a week and I'd be fine with it. Like, I'm okay with being here, but also knowing that it's flexible. Like, I'm not going to stay here. And I know that. That's why I'm gifted awarenesses like this constantly from the muse, because I'm okay with leveling up. When I did DMT about a month ago out in Atlanta, when I met the Phi Tribe, they flew me out there, did DMT on their chair. It was fucking magical. 5 stars, by the way, would recommend. I've done ayahuasca, and I've been a psychonaut for a long time, but this DMT that smoked was very different. It's again 5 stars, very short commitment, no real body anxiety or anything like that. Anyway. But when I did that, it was yes. It was always yes. There were entities there that were greeting me. They kept inviting me further. And I said yes, without fear, yes. The shadow creature came up, stared at the face, yes my way through the next fucking thing. And so it's this constant willingness. My curiosity has always been a slightly bigger tick than my fear. And so that's led me to just the most amazing things, into some of these things, because it's scary to look at this stuff. You know, when you really, this is a head trip. I know I kind of breeze over this because I'm very comfortable with talking about it, because I do quite a bit and I think about it quite a bit. But I'm also now gifted with the awareness that a lot of folks in the audience probably are greeting this idea for the first time. And like, let's say, or at least, you know, y'all have expanded on it, but we're expanding on it here. And I know that that can be heavy. So play with this though, you know, because now when you look around, you'll, you know, beyond the NPC thing, like nothing's real. It's used. It's all the stuff. And I'll be honest, guys, I don't get a lot of bullshit in my life. I don't, I'm not a vibrational match for it. I've done it, you know, and it's boring to me. Like, it doesn't get my attention, which is why I don't get it. Seeing it like this, you know, is freeing as fuck. There's a book by Don Miguel Ruiz called The Four Agreements. You guys have read this, yes?
I have, yes. Yep.
Gio?
No,
We're sending it to you. I'm going to send you a farted on.
Great book. That was I'd say I was like on Think and Grow Rich, Outwitting the Devil, and then The Four Agreements was mixed in with those. That era of my book reading.
All right, Gio, email me your address. I'm going to fart on a copy and send it to you, okay?
All right.
So, but it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. The fart is a gift of love. It's incredible. It has the four agreements in there, and it basically just talks about these four reductive things. Like, it's very simple. You know, this place is so fucking simple, which is why when you look out there and you see all the noise and you're like, oh, why is it so loud? And why are there so many things all the time? And why are there so many things that ask for my attention? You know, they demand it, you know, and anything that does that, in my mind, I've just trained myself to look at this place like anything yelling at you for attention, you know, probably isn't good for the flow of your life. Like, I have no notifications turned on my shit. I appreciate you guys being patient on setting this whole thing up, because I have no notifications. I check it when I check it. Like, it doesn't demand my attention. It doesn't pull me out of my moment of now. And that's how I've eliminated a lot of the fucking noise, man. And that's what I see as noise. It's easy to pop the bubbles. I'm just like, oh yeah, fuck you media, fuck you this, fuck you that. I detach from all of it. I don't look at it anymore. I've long since considered myself a conspiracy theorist for a long time, and now I'm hard on the conspiracy analysts, the Charlie Robinson.
We are too.
So you just don't attach to it, you know.
Yeah.
So it's with all of this shit that you get involved, you grow, you don't attach to the ideas and just keep moving. But anyway, thank you for, you know, let me kind of see that the way I saw it. Maybe that helped you guys, maybe it didn't, but that's just the way I saw it. And only because, again, of the two clear examples of these that I've given you, that I have that much confidence in saying it that way. And I have many more. There's a There's a exercise I've been engaged in where I've been viewing this place as that let's say this is a simulation just for shits and gigs, and it can be fun and freaky woo woo at the same time. Let's say this is a simulation and that this place responds to what you think of it. So let's say it's like the Truman Show, and that the people around you, everything, your in-laws, your wife, your everyone, responds to the way that you think about them, and the way that, if you want to, let's keep it at Truman Show, that you write the scripts for all the people in your life because of the way that you think about them. A clear example of this would be when I started thinking differently about myself, I changed. My script changed immediately. Things changed within my environment. Now, there were still things in my life, opportunities for me to be a greater version of myself that existed, that I was working through at breakneck pace. Now, one of the understandings I got to is whenever my mother-in-law would call, my wife would show me the phone. It was her mom, and we'd both roll our eyes. We'd go, oh, get fucked. You know what I mean? Even this enlightened dude sitting here, had Neil Donald Walsh on the show, sitting here saying, oh, I've got this figured out, which is silly, by the way. I do not. Then, you know, was sitting here immediately dragged back into this frequency, and I felt it. I was like, what the fuck am I doing here again? Like, what is this feeling? Like, why am I so happy about gossip about someone, feeling good that someone else has something that's going on that's horrible in comparison to what I've got going on? I've got my shit figured out in comparison to that. Aren't you glad you're not like your mom, my wife? And we agree with this. And it was this whole energy. And then what I did was my wife and I talked about it one day, and I was like, you know, I'm really into this idea of writing new scripts for the people in our lives. Now, we'd been playing with this by when we go out, we get the best employees, right? So anyone that presents us at like a food counter or something, the most amazing person ever. We get front row parking spots. Like, these are just things you play with, right? So we started dialing it into the people immediately in our lives, or the unhealed versions of us that we had opportunities to do so, or present new perspectives too, which is all we can do. We can show you the door, right? And so we present these perspectives in a new way. I say, well, let's be actionable about this, because I'm not a pushed by the tide kind of guy. I'm very sovereign. This is what I'm here to do. I'm very stubborn in that moment of Leo rising. So I said, well, let's be actionable about this. I'm not into the push and pull of fucking anything, especially your mom. So, your fucking mom, right? And so we said, in that moment, we said, you know what? When she's calling right now, she's got great information. She's doing the best she can with the information she has at the time. She's given new information that gives her new awarenesses constantly, and she's fucking crushing it. And she's calling us right now to tell us that. Now, the way I visualized this was on the other end of that phone, because there is no time, if you want to say this, in real time, she is being given the script that we're giving her to present to us when we answer the phone. When we're ready to engage with this character in our lives, which right now is in the form of a mother-in-law or Mary's mom, then we get to say, she gets to look at that script before we hit answer and go, oh, they're finally writing me a good part. They're finally happy for me. They're finally wishing me well. They're finally sending me good intention instead of using that fuel to make themselves feel better and build their egos up that they're not me, or that I'm over here and they're over there. It's a separation thing. But when we invited her energy to participate in the new script that we had presented for her of new awarenesses and new amazing and new abundance, guess what happened when we answered that phone, gentlemen? She had just left an incredibly toxic relationship by abruptly picking up and moving one of these moves. And I dropped into that jokingly, because you feel the energy of it. One of these moves is that she moved out to this guy out to New Mexico. But that time when she answered the phone and we decided to be different about it, she had left that guy and booked a 1-month stay down in Iquitos, Peru, to go to Carlos Tanner and do ayahuasca for a month and heal herself. That was what happened when we changed the script. We wrote a new script for my mother-in-law, her mom, and she went down to fucking Peru for a month. This is not that 70-year-old white, super prim, fake boob, like Texas, like spoiled, you know what I mean? White chick, the most white thing you could imagine. And she just up and went down to Peru for a month and did this healing. And so, again, I mean, I've written new scripts for everyone in my life, man, because of the way I think about them. And it's down to this, man. It's down to that's when you unlock the shit. That's when it honestly gets scary powerful. That's when it gets fucking scary. So mentally prepare yourselves for this, for like the wow, because we all talk about it. We're powerful, great. Oh, time doesn't exist. But when you really go in and experience the void in a DMT trip, you don't want that. You then look at this place as, oh, well, this is something to keep God busy from going insane, because it's insane. And you get really tripped out with the way that this place could operate, and your power found within it is scary. It can be scary. I'm not going to fucking project any. I'm not going to give you a coloring book and fill it in. What I'm saying is, it's going to be different in the same way that your highest fear is to your highest elation. It pushes your nervous system in a direction you're not conditioned for, you're not terraformed for. So it takes a terraformation process. This is why, like, people who blow the fuck up or like get $400 million in the lottery go back down and even harder, like real quick. This is this firework element, because they haven't conditioned themselves and their nervous system and their emotions and everything to build on that. This is why, like, content creators, I'm like, go slow. I've got this sticky note right here. I'll show you. Not that you need it. I don't think you guys would think I'm lying to you, but you see what that says?
Oh, yeah. My Mercury Taurus, by the way, loves that.
Oh, dude, wow.
Slow down.
Geo's Mercury Aries.
That's something that's always, that's something that Ray's Mercury Taurus is always.
I'm going to elaborate
making sure that it always implements within everything that we do. And you know what? It's true. It always ends up being
all about substance, man.
I've definitely gotten a lot better with that.
Well, I'm a musician. The music
so
thing
fast by slowing down.
You being a musician, right? How many times have you sweet picking or whatever you want to learn, finger pick, whatever, flamenco, whatever big idea thing you want to write all these songs, be a rock star, but the beauty is in sitting there nice and slow, turning the click on. If you can't play it 5 times slow, you can't play it fast. So you have to just slow down. That's and by the way, you had mentioned, this is where we also connect, by the way. My grandfather was a Grammy-winning jazz guitar player who was actually a Buddhist. I never met him. My middle name's Harry because of him. Harry Leahy is his name. And my uncle actually plays for Styx. Dennis DeYoung is the guy from Styx who wrote Mr. Roboto. So I come from a big musical,
awesome,
big musical family, but that. Whether if it was the morphic resonance of my grandfather giving me the Buddhist thing or the music thing or both, I learned that patience and finding the substance and value in things. It's why we came up with the name Intrinsic Minds, because intrinsic, right? What's inherently valuable about something, opposed to like, what's the dopamine hit? Where's the cheap dope? Like, oh, if I could sweet pick, well, okay, you could sweet pick, but like, why don't you put that in a phrase for me where I'm going to actually whistle along with it and like it, and you get me to feel something, right? So even with writing music, it's the same concept. You could go in and be the best this and best that and play the fastest and try to get to A to Z as quick as you can. But what's Alan Watts? He said, like, listen to music. Are you listening to music to get to the end of the song? Or are you actually listening to it to sit in the moment of the song and then feel the moment that you're in? You're not trying to get to there's many songs I've listened to. I'm like, I wish this never ends. I'm a big movie score guy, Hans Zimmer, Samuel Kim. And you learn a lot even just from music. And it's funny because that's what the world is, right? It's if you took just sound in itself and music, you could learn everything and anything you would need to know. Tempo, cycles, keys, being emotions. You can get so much stuff, and that's the beauty of it. And I think that's why my Mercury Taurus, which Taurus ruled by Venus, the arts. That's my mind is more accustomed to what value is someone going to get out of this, opposed to what cheap dopamine hit. What Gemini thing are they going to get out of this? Like, oh yeah, I'm just going to rattle along and spew these facts at you. And you're going to walk away from the conversation having jack shit other than my opinion. And you thinking that maybe you gained something, but what have you gotten from the conversation? Right. And that's what's important. And that's honestly, dude, you mentioned the issues with conspiracies. I have the issues with the conspiracies and also the spiritual community, because I feel like a lot of it has become parroted, cheap dopamine hits, raise your vibration, or the dark cabal, Joe Biden sniffing kids, dark rituals on the ley lines, whatever it is, all that stuff practically could be proven to be something. But at the end, what value are you getting as a soul from that interaction or from what you're consuming? It's junk food, right? It's like, that's why it's important for me, say as a Mercury Taurus, to love the value of something and try to really tune into the substance of a thing, whether it's a person, which I love your energy. Like we've only had so many guests on here, David Weiss, Santos Bonacci, Chinthia Govinda. That's really it. But we've only tried to attract the energy and the people with substance. And that's
I got a bunch more for you, dude. We're gonna fill up your roster. I'd book your whole year out, man. I got a bunch of folks to send you. You're absolutely a vibrational match for.
That's been if anything will appease my Mercury Aries, is something that we were talking about before too. Is just the fact of like we're so, and I think a lot of people are, because I've spoken to somebody else about this. I was just telling Ray, but the whole. I get it that it's we should be grateful for it. It's such an easy convenience to be able to interact with people in different locations via the internet and stuff like that. I'm very grateful for it, but I feel like we're further and start actually building up more of a physicality to it. I mean, I'm a Taurus, like Sun in Taurus, so that's why like I resonate every time. It always puts my like in Taurus always puts my will in check, because I'm like, well, I know that's what I need.
Well,
I know
Gio, not to cut you off, but remember, my Saturn's in Cap, man. Like, so my shit squares that Mercury. So Saturn's sitting there like, are you sure you're getting something out of this? Is that earthy energy, man? I remind you, vice versa.
I know. At my North Node, it's just like, hey, you know that's what's going to lead you on your path, right?
right.
But great. Y'all are great.
Yeah. I that's what I mean. Okay, so anyway, so I kind of just want to shift the conversation just a little bit, not really shifting it, but okay, so we were just talking about this whole thing with, obviously this is something we've been big on with the whole conspiracies and stuff like that. And I feel like it's such a weird time. And I feel like we're just reaching that pinnacle of a lot of people in the truth communities, spiritual communities, all these, the conspiracy and stuff like that, where people are starting to get that sense where it's like, why am I even looking into this anymore? We don't want people necessarily to turn away from it, not exactly in that sort of sense. So that's something I want us to elaborate on. And like, like what I sent you in the email is kind of these topics of things that, obviously are very relevant, relevant to people. And like, we're all about wanting to try to talk to people, not for the views and all that stuff and that sort of relevance, but the relevance of what's actually going to be fresh on your mind. That's always that's going to maybe plant some sort of seed for you to kind of maybe expand your perception on things, rather than just that cheap dopamine hit, everybody's so wrapped up, like as we're recording this, with a lot of the political shit, with the judicial system of Biden crime family, to Trump sexually assaulted this part, whatever it may be. And it's like, but no matter what is we'll start with this. I think the conspiracy part, but my thing about conspiracies is, no matter what, when you let everybody do their breaking down, they get through the gematria, all this stuff and the symbolism,
the Jesuits.
It always comes down to that it's some sort of either otherworldly being, disembodied being, some type of spirit, and it's demonic or it's evil. And then they just leave it at that. They just leave it at that. And it's like, we're just supposed to take your word for it. Now, I know that there's a truth within everything that's being said in a sort of way. There's the truth, there's the other side, and whatever. But I want to get your take on this, because we'll obviously say our part, but me and Ray have had conversations within ourselves and, also, on the podcast, but this is something we're elaborating more on. Let's start with, and we'll kind of group this in a sort of sense, and you could kind of divvy it up how you feel necessary when it comes to, like, what is your take on aliens or spirits or disembodied beings, like all those types of things, angels, demons? What is your take on that?
Oof.
I know it's a loaded question.
It's a beautiful question because it's awesome. I would like to start by saying that remind y'all that there are many lenses in which I view this place. So one of those involves what this place is. Have you guys ever seen a Muppet movie? And in fact, have you ever seen Muppets from Space?
Yeah, real quick, my cousin calls me a Muppet.
Oh, that's adorable, by the way. That's a badge of honor.
My nickname was Boober from Fraggle Rock when I was a kid.
Oh, there you go. Awesome. Badge of honor. I'd wear the shit out of that shirt.
I'll wear I should get a Boober shirt. Anyway, yes, I've seen plenty of the Muppets. Muppets Take Manhattan, by the way, one of the greatest childhood movies
There you go. And if I can add another one, Muppets from Space, just because of the soundtrack alone. It's all funk. I love funk. I'm a sucker for it. So one of the things to notice in there that I thought was interesting was that there's a bunch of people walking around with these Muppets, right? Now, we know from a perspective that they know that they're okay with the fact that they're Muppets. But we, as the audience, as the observer watching this movie, know that there is someone underneath that with a hand, okay, in a puppet. And there's a puppet that's very animated. It gets your attention. It looks like something you interact with. It has eyes that are similar to yours, as this bipedal action to it. But you can still see the motherfucker crouched underneath, right? This is the way that I see this place. There are real people here, and then there are people underneath with puppets holding them up. Whenever anything from the box comes out, it's somebody with a puppet, in my view. All the political shit, it's one person with two puppets on either hand, red and blue. And they're just getting your attention.
I agree with that.
How I view this place. And so,
very similar to the egregore concept.
100%. And so when you interact with people on this, they're playing the role. So you're talking to the character, and they don't know that they're not that character. They're so invested in this. They're the folks in the cave looking at shadows. They're portraying this creature that they don't know that there's another perspective to. Just like fish in a pond. You may go fishing or whatever and you do catch and release. We have this pond out here. We're just catching and releasing all the time. those fish in there have to think, what the fuck is going on up there, right? It's an environment we can't survive in. Maybe there's something up there, maybe there's not. But another fish friend of mine, dude, Dave, got fucking ganked up by something, some UFO, went to a whole nother world where the atmosphere was bright and there were beings and there were giants and there was fucking green things. We don't even know what that was. Then he got tossed back and he's trying to explain this experience. I feel, are presented with a version of reality that is meant to make us feel that it's real for a time. It's something that I've been calling lately temporary truths. And temporary truths are in everything, dude. Everything. I find them like, let's say manifestation's a big one. You have to feel one thing to get to the next level. So at one level you go, oh, I'm manifesting money, and so I'm going to do it in this way. And then when you get through that enough, you get through that temporary truth. It's been used up. Then you get to a new temporary truth, because that's all you're presented with is new temporary truths. Everything about it, no matter what level you're at. And this is why I'll never say I have anything figured out. I'm looking forward to experiencing my next temporary truth after this one served its purpose. From there, from the money, when you go, oh, actually, this whole time I've been thinking I needed to do money, but what it did was it allowed me that tactile time to be invested in the process, which actually gave me the awareness, once I was ready for it, to see that actually it's not money that I want, it's freedom that I want. And so what I'm doing is I'm aligning to the version of freedom, which is really what money gives me. Now, if I align to that, money has to come, because that's part of freedom, because I've established that, right? So again, but even from there, that's a temporary truth, because even beyond that, it's about alignment. Where I'm at now is it's about alignment. So I've not manifested shit. I've been being in perfect, absolute alignment to my highest authenticity, actually the force of, not my highest associating. I'm not accessing anything. I'm embodying the force of authenticity, elation, and service, and in that order. If I'm the happiest motherfucker, I'm the happiest motherfucker because I'm the most me. If I'm both of those things, I'm going to be of the highest level of service. So that's all I've been aligning to. And I haven't been specific about shit. I've cast a wide net with this and just been in full flow and surrender. I said, all right, motherfucker, here's what I've got. I don't care how you bring it. It's that or something better. That's the only time I do that or something better. So when we get back to the way that reality is viewed, there's this concept of a bad guy, and there's a lot of puppets here, people holding up puppets that play roles. They say, oh yeah, my puppet feels this way. They are getting the shot. They're advertising it on Facebook. They're not into Ukraine, but then somebody else is. So they're at odds with that, even though they agree on 1,000 other points, that one actually. And so our characters have so many different stories and nuances, and there's so many things to wrap up into and to remember and to be focused on. And oh yeah, we don't like that guy anymore. And no, that person's not part of our tribe. And all the time, these folks are squatting around under with these puppets, bumping around into each other, uncomfortable in the squatty position, playing these roles that it's elaborate and it's noisy and it's loud and it's competitive in a way that's never ending. And when you see it this way, you're just like, oh, okay, I get it. It's got nothing to do with that. It's about the way that I view it. So from this, then, the puppets that argue, the puppets that kill each other, the puppets that do horrible things that were presented with the idea exist, which is all I can prove, then you say, well, then there must be this huge war going on. There must be this thing that I must be involved in the participation of the waking up of, because I've put on a white hat. My puppet that I'm puppeting has a white hat on. That's right. Yeah, I can see it. We're not on that team. We're on this team. But that other team feels the exact same way. So if you scale it back, you look at it like a play, right? Back to Bill Hicks, it's just a ride. Back to Dolores Cannon, it's all play. Pat Mahan and I have gotten on some awesome conversations on this. Again, a guy you got to have on. It's done already. Get out of here with that. This dude and I talk about the no bad guy thing. There's no bad guy here from my perspective. Nothing out here is here to harm me. Nothing here is here to hurt me. It's all here to teach me, because if God is all there is, and God is all there is, God's also the shit that we don't prefer here. The trafficking that we say is going on, that's God. There is no hell, therefore Hitler went to heaven. This is in that book. I've been sitting with these ideas for a very long time, and I see it from such an awesome perspective that I'm very comfortable with, that is in no way passive. This is well beyond the scared, fortified. I live in Texas. We know how to protect ourselves. I'm much more the warrior in a gardener. Warrior in a garden, not the gardener in a war. I have no need to protect myself. I have no need to feel that I need to be protected. I'm not in that I'm not a vibrational match for those situations here. So therefore, I don't experience them. So the way that I look at this place again is the things out there, the Klaus Schanel Schwabs and shit, they're projecting an option of experience for us as a collective. Now, if we choose differently than that, we have options, right? Even that option of experience comes with options of experience for us to determine if that's an option of experience we prefer, which is always a choice. You're not forced to do fuck all here. And the contact phenomenon is very clear about that. The aliens will be like, hey, can we do shit to you? And they'll be like, no. And they're like, all right, go sit over there. We'll drop you off later. Sovereignty is huge. No one's going to pin you down and do anything to you. The idea that it can happen must exist for you to feel that it does, but it's not a reality. And everyone can answer this honestly. Anything beyond that is lessons. Now, this is one of these conversations, guys, that your audience is prepared for. But this is a high level of emotional maturity, as we call this, because this is not an easy thing to talk about. If you've ever had anything horrible happen to you and you still feel that that is the way that it is, my heart is out there and empathetic to you. I always can only speak from my perspective. Now, when we talk about this again, to see it from a play perspective, your Klaus Schanel Schwabs and all that shit, they hope you don't choose it. That's a shitty option. And they know that. They're here to play the role of an employee of a matrix, of a system that presents things to you that fucking suck. And again, you have the option to sit and bitch about it, point out all the reasons why it's not good, and sit in that. And that's an option of experience. And you could sit there with it and you could bitch about it as they completely roll it out underneath you because there was no action beyond observation. So you're given observation. You're given inspiration after that, which gives you inspired action to follow up on. So I truly see this place as we are the deliberate creators. There's a system here. There are employees that present you obstacles and opportunities of experience. If you choose against those, then your job is to create something different. No one's coming to save you. It's back to the Bolshevik revolution shit. It's back to the Q shit. It's back to the, oh, just hang back. We've got this. Just don't worry about it. Go back to eating your pizzas and watching your football and drinking your whatever you want that's not diametrically opposed with your beliefs. So all of those things in my mind are, again, invitations for you to re-enter the matrix, just go back. But really I see them as opportunities to be a greater version of ourselves, because now we're coming to these huge awarenesses as a tribe. As y'all said, the bringing it into the physical, you're absolutely right. Just got invited to, and my wife I just came back from the Contact at the Canyon event that Grimerica puts on. And that was incredible, guys. This is, 40-something people in a badass cabin. Brandon Powell was there doing cold plunges, breath work. We're like under the stars doing this stuff with David Matheson. So these people I've had on the show are now in my physical reality. Now, I made that happen. I know this because we decided that now is the time that we are all ready to come together. Since then, Dr. Doug Matsky, the dude, this author of this book, has come to my house. We put up a satellite dish with this Wish unit that's fucking pumping out dope energy all over the place. Our place was remote viewed to get that done. He showed up at the house. Then we had Steve Hayes fly in. He's this huge orchard guy that developed an app, and this all has to do with something exciting for Phi Tribe that we're working on. But he flew in here for us to talk about some stuff for Phi Tribe. But this dude developed the app that's now worth $100 billion, something like that, on by Sony, something like this. So he's working with us for the Phi Tribe stuff and building a native app for them. And then all of these just amazing things. So if you choose to look at this place that there are things out there that are dangerous and going to hurt you, that is your puppet responding in character is the way that I see it. So I took my puppet off a long time ago. He's hanging in some fucking closet somewhere. He's awesome. I didn't throw him out because it's part of me. It's your shadow, if you want to call it. It's that part of you. But I haven't worn that thing. I haven't put that damn thing on in a long time. It's boring. I mean, that's it. It's just boring to sit there and go, that's fucked up. And yeah, it is fucked up, isn't it? Yeah, it is fucked up. Oh, that's fucked up. Oh, that's fucked up. Oh, it is fucked up, isn't it? And conversation after conversation, you gotta know what to do year after year. Exactly. Yeah. And so being empowered with this then would be where you see this place as there are no bad guys, and that the things that you find to be demons in your life, if you anthropomorphize them that way, are high-fiving themselves when you choose against the option they presented for you. They only presented it as a shitty option for you not to pick. And it's when you pick it that they're like, fuck, how are we going to scale this up for this motherfucker to redirect? I was given this badass metaphor. You're given a feather, a brick, and then a truck. You're given opportunities to get on course, to be here, to be why you're here. You're naturally drawn to shit. And when you're in disdain and dis-ease and shit, that's because you're fighting against that. You're given a feather at first. It's this little thing that just queefs against your face. You're like, this little, hey, pay attention.
A bum.
And if you don't, a little boop. And if you don't, you get a brick. Bricks suck, right? It's not going to kill you, but man, it fucking sucks. It gets your attention. If you then go, fuck you, brick, I'm just going to truck immediately. You're going to get hit at these levels and they will reduce you down to the point of surrender. Now, if you can see this in advance, you live in surrender. You don't even see feathers anymore. There's nobody losing feathers. And when they come down, you greet them in your hand and you blow them off. I don't get trucks. I don't get fucking bricks. I see feathers, maybe. But even then, they are so easy to identify. It's like that Quicksilver in X-Men, when everything's in slow motion. That's what it feels like. It feels like this with the Matrix. I get what they're talking about. Everything slows down because you're not caught up in the fact that it gets your attention so much that you're spun into a vibrational roller coaster that is a familiar ride for all of us, man. It's
Yeah, I immediately, by the way, thought of the symbolism of Home Alone, where Marv and Harry are on top of the roof throwing the bricks.
Yeah, there you
Suck
go.
Brick, kid. And if you're little, Kevin, and you just sidestep those bricks or whatever. You don't have to get hit by them if you know that the bricks are coming. Take the action to sidestep and start taking action. Right? Yeah, I love. Yeah,
because a lot of folks will stand there. Oh my God, it's coming! It's coming! It's coming! It's coming! It's coming! Have you ever seen Austin Powers? When the steamroller goes real slow, and he's like, no. And he stands there in front of it, but it takes him forever. He has to fill
get out the way
several times to continue to scream no. And they're saying, just move, just move. This is a great metaphor for this shit. You get so much opportunity and you don't have to let things go to absolute shit. Now, there's a part of that manifestation that's called a tower moment in tarot, where once you truly commit in a line, the things that are not in vibrational match with that, they fucking go away, and they go away quick. Which is, again, another opportunity for you to be a greater, grander version of yourself and know you invited that and know it's part of the process. It's a fascinating place, guys. This is a fascinating fucking place, man.
I just have something to build off that, because exactly it's so see this is exactly everything that you said is, I feel like, the aspect that a lot of people in the said communities that I just said, they miss that process. They miss that that's actually the message. Even it doesn't matter on the teacher too. I mean, it does matter, but it doesn't really matter on the teacher who's presenting the information. Maybe they're just throwing out numbers at you and symbolism and the gematria and this thing and the next thing and this conspiracy and what's going on in the world and all that stuff. But they don't have the mental process or the spiritual process to be able to transmute these things into something, like you're saying, of understanding or understanding, more so, of to be like, well, oh, this is about me. This is about me shifting my awareness and being able to know, more so being able to be attuned to certain frequencies to either not be on something or to be on something, and they leave that. They don't go into that. I'm not saying that everybody does that. There's a lot of people that do get that message.
Obsession over narrative. That's what you're looking for.
Yes, and that's the thing, and that's my thing. That it's like, all right, where this is where I think me and Ray are taking on the more challenging role, where sometimes we want to be like, all right, well, fine. If you don't want, if you're not immediately understanding or seeing between the lines of what the message is with maybe some of these so-called conspiracies or something like that, or just these weird demonic energies that are coming at you and or being presented to us in some sort of way, then let's maybe more so look at the potential origins, I guess, of these manifested energies and stuff, which, little foreshadowing, it's always going to be about you, but we'll get there. But the thing is that I think a lot of people can't grasp that idea, And especially because of so many narratives that have been given throughout time, and then the deep occult history and religion and all these things, like that's where it's like where I feel maybe Ray at times too, but like I have such this deep obsession with wanting to clarify, you know, as best as possible of maybe the origins with certain understandings of you know, things like possession, demons, angels, aliens, you know, all that stuff, and on all these different types of energies, and what we know with combined sciences, religions, certain occult doctrine, and all that stuff is bridge the gap to understand maybe where some of these things come from. Like, let's just say, you know, there's so many people that want to, you know, like, for example, when the Balenciaga thing happened, everybody right away had a focus on Baal and everything that had to do with Baal and that demon and stuff. And it's like, why are they even given names? Like, how do we know things are actually being manifested? Like, who says that's a thing that already existed? Why does it exist? You know, in that sort of sense, or Asmodeus or Baphomet and all that stuff. It's like, anytime you hear about that stuff, I mean, point me in a direction that says elsewhere, but everything always just says those names or those things, and it's just left at that. And it's like, well, why is it? Why is it that thing? Why is it Baphomet? Why is it Asmodeus? Why is it Baal? Why is it Behemoth? Like, why are you just saying it's a demon? And where does that demon come from? You're just chalking it up once again to another bad guy with some sort of long lineage line name. And it's like, what does that really do for me? That just makes me have to believe that there's just some sort of bad spirit, and therefore, based on what I know, at least, I'm just like, well, that means I have to feed into it then, because I have to believe that that's something in existence. So it's like, where does that really come from? Why does that exist? Is that a collective thought? And I think this is where me and Ray have kind of come into it. And me and him had a good conversation. If you could tap back into that conversation that we had on the phone and how you started to elaborate it, where you said, and using morphic resonance and using this whole, God, I'm trying to remember how you even said it too, because it made the most sense in that way. When you want to go back on history, when you want to go back on civilizations, and more so of just anthropomorphizing all this stuff and using archetypes to trying to transform some of these frequencies and energies, right?
Yeah. So I remember my points.
Okay, so maybe you could take it from there. No, maybe you could take it from there.
It's like electricity, right? Or anything else in this reality is a symbol. And then so within the symbols of this reality, it's how we name them to be, right? So if anything in this, electricity could cook my dinner, it could cook a man to death, right? So like, it's inherently neutral until we decide that it is bad or good, or however we want to color it in. When it comes to these rituals and the dark Baphomet and all that, these are symbols. So to me, I look at all of this stuff as how it was colored in. So if we're looking at the rituals and we're looking at the numbers and all that, yeah, we're tapping into that version of reality where it is being expressed in the negative way. We're watching the electricity at that point cook the person, opposed to watching it cook our food to bring nourishment and food into our life and all of that. So to me, in the way I see it, most people are feeding into that egregore. That's why I love the concept of egregore. Or by the way, and you, dude, you are going to love, the more you talk before, you're going to love transurfing, dude, because the idea of, say, what we would call an egregore in the occult would be also called a pendulum in transurfing. And so how he describes it is, you have a thought construct, Republican, Democrat. That's now a paradigm in itself. And what a pendulum does is, the more you feed it energy, whatever side it is, good, bad, red, blue, doesn't matter. Your thought energy goes into that system, into that paradigm. You are now, regardless if you're denying it or you're embracing it, you are feeding it the energy. So you are actually pushing the pendulum.
You're giving it existence.
If you are anti-Biden, you are still actually pushing the Biden energy. You're actually getting the pendulum to swing more. So the more you scream ritual, conspiracy, Baphomet, that the expression that now originally wasn't intended to, whether if it was by the occult, whether by the puppets, right, or by whoever else who's controlling those puppets, because you're screaming at that energy, the pendulum has now been pushed more. And now what that does is it actually speeds it up, makes it more powerful, gives it more energy. And now that shows up more in your life. So now that you've cried out conspiracy and you've cried out that this is evil, now that reality, like the mirror effect, like you speak of, is now going to say, okay, well, this person's screaming this. I don't hear whether you like it or that you don't like it. I just hear you're screaming that frequency. So now that has to now show up in your life more and more and more. So my big thing with the conspiracy community is that's my problem with it, is that when you are constantly yelling that back at that energy with the same energy, or with it the fact that it's something you have to defeat, now reality, you have decided for reality to give you that is something you have to defeat.
It's a worthy adversary.
You've created the enemy, but the enemy is actually you in the end, because what it is you've actually allowed yourself to be swindled into the pendulum vortex, and now you are involved in that. That's why, and what got me big into this, by the way, sorry, I'm sidebarring here, but what got me big is there's a channel called Quantum of Conscience. His name is Matt McKinley. And he started talking about how during the pandemic, it seemed like everyone was on a frequency, right? And this guy's not an occult guy. He's just a Virgo, by the way, but just strictly an observer, right? And he had great ways of putting this, what he was watching, into perspective without knowing some Blavatsky or knowing Manly P. Hall. And he makes fun of that shit, by the way. But he's like, I don't need to know all this esoteric crap to see it. You watch people end up kind of sink into a frequency, and they become the archetype themselves. So within, say, Republican, Democrat, you have so many different archetypes within that. And when I'm listening to him, I go, yeah, they're sucked into the pendulum, playing a part in that swing of the pendulum. And so now they're not even thinking their own thoughts anymore. They're no longer individuated. They are overcome by the frequency, by the egregore or the pendulum of that paradigm. And you're now tuning in. That's why transurfing is amazing, man, because you tune in into the space of variations. You've now entered that level of reality where you can only experience what you've labeled that experience as. So if you take a step back and you go 10,000 feet in the air and you look down on reality and you say, well, actually, I get to choose. Like, and if I'm noticing something come up in my life, it's giving me a message, opposed to what is it? Conspiracy theorists. They're rubbing it in our face. They're mocking us. And I hate when they go the occult. There's no that's like saying the happy, or that's like saying the spiritual. Oh, those people are the spiritual. No, they're not. They're practicing spiritual principles. Same thing with the occult. Stop giving these people so much power by your observation. Yeah, sorry, rant over. But yeah,
love it.
Yeah.
No apology needed. And you're both absolutely correct. What you feed persists, so there's that metaphor, the grandfather and the grandson watching two wolves, one named love, one named fear. And the grandson asks the grandfather which one grows. And the grandfather, of course, answers whichever one you feed. So if you wish to change things, first of all, it's all right here. Go within. You've got to go with my recommendation. I never tell anyone what to do. What I did was I went within and I quieted all the noise. And at this moment in time, I'm, in Alt Media United. I participate in Union of the Unwanted all the time. I love all those guys, and I love what they're doing. They're incredibly powerful and absolutely correct. I don't feel the need to wake anyone up. I don't feel the need to fulfill anyone's karma. I don't feel that is my role. I am beyond also that, and so detached from it to where, like I said, I wouldn't know where to give you a news story. I have no idea what's going on. I'm so far removed from that world because I'm too busy creating. I'm too productive with what my actual mission is here. And what that involved is to recognize those things as a distraction that had nothing to do with me. Bill Hicks calling it back, as he said, on the news, and this is back in the 90s, he's talking about this stuff, on the news, they say war, famine, death, destruction, havoc, depression, all of these things that he goes, and then you look out your window and it's crickets. He goes, where the fuck is all this shit happening? And that really made me think. And it's one of these things to where there's a difference between danger and threat. Those are two very different things. Now, the world wants you to believe, and we'll just say the Matrix, which is just another version of you. It's the part of you that motivates the parts of us, the individuated pieces of consciousness that don't see things the way that we do, that don't read at the same level. Because obviously, if folks did, then those things wouldn't exist. Number one, because they're there for a reason as an equal and opposite reaction, right? To motivate those parts of us. I consider them like brooms. They're like sweeping up the parts of consciousness that are like, get fucked. But it's happening either way. This expansion, this awareness, this conscious, whatever you want to say, it's happening. And it's happening all the time, by the way. But what I feel now is what happened in 2020 was the catalyst, right? It was the wake up. It was the parts of ourselves that we have assigned to be the bad guy. They're not, in my mind, the bad guy, but those were the ones that said, all right, start the sweeping, kick the Zamboni up for you Yankees. Let's, clean it up. And it started running. And if you want to visualize this as a cymatic pattern, the earth clicked, something changed. And in that interim from the pattern we were at, this frequency you talked about, then that pattern switched. Now, in that pattern switching, it's not that it just goes, oh, snap your fingers and it's done. What happens in that whenever you visualize the cymatics, which is a speaker on a solid plate with a single tone being played with granules of either sand or some sort of particulate over it, which makes a pattern. It's a physical manifestation, representation of that frequency. 528 hertz looks different than 432, right? And so what I feel is a great metaphor for what occurred in 2020 for our consciousness as a whole is that it switched frequencies. Now, again, it was switching frequencies. So there is, again, not an immediate thing. And if you watch cymatic patterns, when they switch from 432 to 528, there's a moment in there where it's chaos. It's absolute fucking chaos. All the shit's running around. The old pattern has completely dissolved, like the caterpillar that completely dissolved itself into a goo inside the cocoon. It's complete chaos. Fucking nothing makes sense. This is the wake up, if you want to say it. But this is where, in my mind, we realized it was a game. We realized that we were actors playing a role. But the role is so great and the thing is so awesome for a large percentage of our psyche, which again, I don't view as other people. I view as our psyche, our collective, as the same thing as me, just experiencing a different part of consciousness in a different way. Then once I looked at it like that, I was just like, oh, okay, then I just remove myself from the parts of it that don't apply to me. And again, you feed that egregore. So as a whole, one could say that if we all just for one day turn the news off, it wouldn't present itself in the way that it does to us. It only does so because we choose, and I'm putting we in big arm hugs here. All of us choose to experience that way. Again, the second you stop feeding it your energy, this egregore concept, completely on board with this. Why do they exist at all? Representations of the darkness of man. Then we give them power. Then they walk among us. There are many things like this. Now, I was gifted by the muse, is how I will put it. My own egregore, the Thought Ninja, and this was gifted to me at like the most important time ever. I've got a t-shirt about it. I've been on a lot of shows talking about it. It's an egregore I empowered to make sure that my thoughts were at a certain vibrational threshold, like a bouncer for my mind. Change my fucking life, dude. Change my life. And he's awesome. Now other people have like fleet of fairies. My wife has a little fleet of fairies that will act as the same representative for her. Other people, White Rabbit, Catalyst Jones has his. This is a Mortal Kombat figure, and it's just really interesting. So we can do this at any time with anything. And so when you realize that when you pull your energy and attention from that, it no longer gets fed. So it's now starving a little bit. And if you think about the reaction from the Matrix, right? It plays a role. Well, its role is to survive as well. It needs to be totally embedded in its puppet. It needs to think it's doing the fuck out of its job. And for all these reasons, like Thanos, right? It has to know that it has virtuous reasons in which it's playing this part, as do we, which is why, again, if you scale it back, it's all a big game of you playing you in a game of how you doing, is how I look at this place. So the things that seem heavy and all of that stuff, they're only relevant to you as long as you see this place is out of your control, that you have control of it in the first place, and that you need to be saved, which I know sounds very counterintuitive, but that's the way it's phrased. So that's the way I'm going to phrase it. That's the way I have understanding of it, that your control comes in releasing control, that you're just like, oh, that's actually the biggest thing. And that by holding on to this shit, there's this saying that's be strong enough to be gentle, and that it only applies to yourself. It always applies to yourself, because anyone out there that you're speaking to that comes at you at some reading level that you're exceeding or that you're beyond, you have an opportunity in that moment to prove it. But when you come back, because you need to come with them to argue with them, to compromise the state in which you were in. When you return to that, you're now no different. There's a saying, I think it was Mark Twain, said, never argue with a crazy person because people watching might not know the difference, meaning that they don't know which one's fucking crazy. Because if you're willing to argue with that person, there's no different in anyone observing's mind. You're just as crazy as them because you have more wherewithal, you have higher awareness, but you chose to come down here and yell at this person that's not going to get it anyway. They feed off of this level of interaction, and they got the ability, they got you over here. They tapped you on the shoulder, and instead of love and grace, and that's what consciousness does as that opportunity of expansion, you decided to come back down, which is fine. There's no right or wrong here, but you're going to be given those things as options of experience. And every time, anything, any little glance at someone, any time you walk through a door with a frown instead of a smile, those are opportunities to be greater, grander versions of yourself. All there is the moment of now, from my perspective. So again, these things that they yell at you, yeah, but in your past and in our past, we maybe, we're presented a narrative. If you really want to get down to the reliability of memory and the reliability of us being told the truth about our history, which is his story, then you really get to this point to where you're like, well, all of it's bullshit. So then why would I give my attention to something that, number one, I can't prove, and number two, feeds that egregore more, even though I'm on the virtuous side of it? Because there's no difference. People watching don't know the difference, and the fucking experience doesn't care. It gets your loosh. Give me your loosh. It doesn't give a shit. So by removing it completely, the same thing I did with Mr. Peter Slavin here, I removed my energy completely from it and scrubbed it clean. I'm out. It's a beautiful thing for me, because when I see things I don't care for, it's an obvious indicator that it's not a resonant match for me or an option for me to grow.
Sorry, Gio, go.
No, not. Well, the only thing I was going to say is just like when it comes to like I guess like with what I was saying and more of the historical side of things. And yes, we know that history in many cases is most likely obscured. My thing is like when we look at it, not just to look at it as this is what the history book says, or this is what modern history says and whatever. And that's the fact. It's more so like the way I like to do it, especially, Pluto Scorpio, I like to look at more of the deeper depths of the psychology of maybe the people or the life in general during that time. And maybe what the conscious energy was being presented, and what they were more so leaning towards during that time. And I feel like maybe that draws a line to some of maybe some of the doctrines of what they're saying and stuff like that, can maybe show people more so of what the conscious energy was during that time. And if we really deeply look at it in that sense, and therefore the only reason you would do that, in my opinion, is just more so to see more so just to try to resonate with a certain type of frequency. And not saying that you should resonate with whatever frequency that is, but to acknowledge what maybe it was that was coming up at that time, and what you could have been presented with, especially with however life was sustained during that time, whatever type of hardships were dealt with and stuff. And therefore you could put yourself more so in the character of maybe somebody in that era, and then be like, oh, okay, well, I could see how my perception would have shifted in this sort of way. And if it shifted in this sort of way, then I'm giving my conscious energy, I'm giving my attention to maybe this area, and therefore with the rest of maybe what society is, especially with what is his story, right, and what's really the dominant thing that ends up taking over, I can see how it creates this strong egregore and this strong pendulum that now, because it's encoded and and indoctrinated into the institutions through the history and everything, and now it's passed through generation and generation. It's being kept alive, and therefore whoever the writers are at that time can put whatever name to it, whatever type of depiction that they want to it. But that's the thing, there is a veil, and we could see through that veil. But the whole point is, how does that relate to you now? If you were to follow that, and if you can look at maybe the origin in that sort of sense, then maybe you can gain a sort of perspective on maybe a more frequency type energy that's being presented during that time, and maybe how it carried over to present day. And that's why it's like, I feel like we're not given that type of awareness, or presented that type of awareness to look at things way, to be like, oh, all right, well, if that's maybe what was occurring and what was maybe being felt, and on all different hierarchies of levels of potential, different areas of civilization or societies, like, if we can look at that and try to examine those areas, and more so of the human perspective and the human consciousness, then maybe we can actually see what that felt like. We can more so tap into that 4D nature, I guess. And therefore that's how, it relates to that whole timeline thing, and how to resonate with certain frequency. And we all have it because, our DNA, and a big thing that me and Ray have gone into is morphic resonance and morphic fields, presented by Rupert Sheldrake. And I feel like that plays a role too, is like, because maybe that's what sustains some of these things that are presented to us to this day, that we connect to, that maybe we don't know that we're connected to, or that are given certain names and certain things, and we just accept it.
Historical egregores put in place.
Yeah, basically.
What if the thought of history itself is an egregore in itself? The thought that there have been generations worth of generations of people creating something, therefore it's an insurmountable from that viewpoint process to undo that damage, because there's been so much generational time behind it. And it seems pretty insurmountable for one person to tackle on their own. Therefore, let's just turn around. But I feel that there are many of these in anything. You get even in conspiracies, you'll get to a point with it. Oh, it was a bat in the lab. Got it. And then you'll just stay there. And then you hang there. And then you won't take it past this. Scientists do this with tenure perspectives all the time. They build a theory. 30 years ago, they got tenure. They proved it wrong 28 years ago, but they keep needing to prop it up because of the existence. And even people discover this and they say, we can't do shit about it until he dies. This is the way that we're told this place works. But again, what if you kind of are presented then an opportunity bigger, like what Jason Bashir talks about with this maybe 138 year cycle. And in that case, you would need to do some sort of rapid memory implant, right? To give the illusion that this place has been here for a while, that there's a generation's worth of went through hardships, and that you have it so much better. But we see these fucking UFOs fly around all the time. What is that? Obviously, there's technology around here. What if this is just a big game where you're dropped sort of in a fucking primitive forest, a spiritual equivalent to the show Survivor, where you have every fucking thing at some level of experience, but here you don't, and you're told that it's a certain story. It's a Westworld experience, perhaps, that you're given a narrative. All these things are fast-tracked for you. Everyone's got a story. It's in the form of an implant. And if you really want to fucking noodle, something I've been thinking about lately is you don't need the elaborate things that people talk about to create a simulation, this huge sun-sized power generator and stuff. I mean, and again, some people get to that and then just go, no, don't tell me about anything more. I'm going to hang on to this for a while. Maybe go beyond it, maybe not. But where I'm with it now, this fucking trips me out. And I'm not a fan of it, by the way. I'm not a fan of it because I feel that I have claustrophobic tendencies. But what I mean to say is, like, think of Vitruvian Man. Maybe that's the map of reality, right? Because perhaps like your experience only needs to exist to right here. And who's to say that you even need to really have arms at all? This could be a whole brain in a vat situation to where you're only sent electrodes to the parts of your mind in a very sophisticated series and pattern that's been long figured out. And maybe it's nothing this physical brain at all. Maybe it's just a simulation of an octopus thinking that it's a human having this experience, but the octopus's consciousness is in this with a story, with a narrative, with all that, with these powers that we're told we have. And so therefore you can create based on the things you expect. And so therefore you're presented with a fuckload of things for a myriad of reasons, maybe to confuse you at first to hone your powers, maybe a myriad of this entourage effect kind of a things. But again, to presuppose that the things are accurate when we talk about, I bring a lot of possibilities into this, because then it expands, because now you're sitting here thinking, oh shit, well, maybe it's not a history at all. Maybe it's just images in my mind. And again, maybe your reality ends just out of your reach. Maybe that's it, because for a sophisticated simulation to operate, it doesn't need to render an environment so fucking accurately, even to the elaborateness we'll give it now with our current understanding or our ability to perceive through video games, that you don't need to render what's behind you or that you're not looking at. Oh, they could save on computing space for that. But again, we're anthropomorphizing what our ability to see what's possible and then giving it form and structure, which is how we navigate to the next temporary truth, right? But again, if you don't need to render a full reality, what then would be a way to simulate an environment? All you would need to do, this is the trippy part about this, is simulate or be able to completely steer the perception of the occupant, because space, vastness, wind, things like these, the fact that the feeling that you're in an expansive place, all of that's simulated. All of that is an apprehension of perception. That's all that is. It's electrodes being fed to you by this thing called your senses, which are incredibly limited even by measurable standards. And then you sit here and even that, your visual acuity, right? You don't even have the ultraviolet, the infrared, they're not there, but they're there. And then you have things like our hearing, right? You're given 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz for a human hearing range. Some variations, but it's right there. And if you ever lose that, it only diminishes over time, but there's a shitload of sounds, things you can feel with other senses that are called sound that you don't experience in other ways. So again, all you would have to do is apprehend the perception of the occupant. That's it. And this can be very simply and cheaply achieved by an advanced civilization. I mean, and not even that far from now. We could be living in that now, is what I'm saying. So like the idea of, again, a history, narratives, all these stories, these puppets being held up, I see them as just artifacts of the experience. They're just employees here. They're options. They're attractions on the side of the road.
I'm on full on board with that. I mean, like when I get what you're saying too, Gio, with the you're basically saying look for the residue and where the residue came from, or look where the egregore. Like if you go to the source of the egregore, you could see what the intention was, and you could see how that colored in and created a reality for us. Where Brandon's saying.
Well, that's absolutely possible too. Like I'm not ruling that out at all.
Right. Well,
and because that would be a good way energetically to pass it on is through story, right?
Right. They're putting us on that level, on that story by then in putting it into the books and programming it into our consciousness.
And I think that's a lot of what the Catholic Church. I'm not. This is not in no sort of way trying to demonize the Catholic Church at all. Which I know that
any religion.
I know, and I know that a lot of people would be okay with that, but that's not what I'm trying to do. But like, it makes me think of actually something that I just recently, I recently watched, which I ended up looking into because I was like, is this really true? Or is this just Hollywood doing its thing? But I watched that new movie, The Pope's Exorcist, right, with Russell Crowe.
I have not.
And okay,
but go ahead. I'm so unplugged, dude. I'm so unplugged. But please continue.
Wait, but if you watch this movie, so basically, Russell Crowe plays this guy, Gabriel Armuth, right? Who was the Pope's exorcist. I think late 80s into early 90s, something like that. I could have that wrong, right? And it's about a true story based off his depictions, right? Which, once again, that's somebody else's perspective. But the thing is, though, is that he was the Pope's exorcist. But as I'm going through it and I'm watching it, right, and he ends up dealing with a really strong case of an exorcism, and therefore it takes over. But I'm watching the methodology of exorcism, and I've watched this, and I've known this for a long time, and I would back when I was younger all the time, when I was more so intrigued. And this is kind of what kind of got me on my path, was through certain faith and religion and stuff like that. And I noticed that they have a methodology, and they're going into the old archives and the old texts, and it's like they have to get the spirit or the demon to admit its name and tell its name, and that's the only way that they can really exorcise the demon, and all these things. And also what I saw from that was it ends up coming down to that this demon was manifested through the evils done through the Inquisitions.
That's awesome. Like paying ancestor trauma, like it'll manifest in you, like drinking problem, and unless you heal it, it gets passed on. That's pretty cool.
And it was locked in this location in Spain under a Vatican-ruled church, a Vatican-ruled cathedral, and it was locked away where it was well, in the movie, they put it as potentially as one of the 200 places that God buried his fallen angels and stuff like that. And, that whole narrative that it's like, this is where he locked up his fallen angels and stuff like that. But apparently the fallen angels, the way they depict it in this movie and through the accounts, is that the fallen angels had some sort of persuasion power over even the holiest of holies that were in that location, and the people. It didn't matter. They worked through gaining people's attention. They worked on people's fear. They worked on people's traumas. And to me, that resonated in a sort of sense, because it's like, where do you see most of those things where people right away want to classify as tormented or demonic or evil and stuff like that? It always happens in a lot of people that have some sort of traumatic issue or some sort of vulnerability in that way. So it's like, this whole thing happens, and what they realize is they're dealing with the most powerful demon in hell, which is Asmodeus, right? That's why that immediately came to mind, and I said Asmodeus, right? But the thing is, the methodology behind it was like they're trying to get it to say its name. That's the only way they could exercise it. But they start going into the old doctrines, and that's how they realize that they're like, oh shit, this place was a deep cavern for inquisitions. And what they did was they killed a lot of people here, and they buried them beneath the surface here. So that's a lot of, in my head, how I'm taking that is like, that's a lot of heart space resonance that they're taking from people that could potentially, that are actually innocent, right? But they're heresy to the word or to the doctrine that is presented during that time. But also what comes out of that is they find out that through some historical thing of when the Inquisition started, that there was some weird abrupt shift where it was like that the Pope's exorcist during that time of the Inquisitions was possessed himself. So that reign of the Inquisitions was actually was doing, because it was all possession at that time. Now, I translated that into a different thing, not in more so in a religious sense. And I'm trying to see it now as a sense of being like, okay, well, I can see how a lot of distorted ways and prideful ways that maybe the church had during that time, and feeling that their religion was it, and they threw so much heart and so much ritual and so much energy and so much belief into this area that they allowed for this power to arise in a sort of sense. And when you let that power culminate, but it's unchecked in a sort of sense, your thought, nobody's going to check it, because everybody's just like, well, it's God's people, it's the Holy Roman Empire. it's this. Who gives a shit, right? What they say goes. And you're telling me nobody, this is what I mean, put yourself in the mind of those people at that time, and even the people in the church, they know. You think that everybody was fully a monk and just in check and being like, oh, well, I'm humble and I'm in this space, and no, there's people that are weak in the mind in that sort of sense, and allow for a vulnerability and allow for this energy to come into that allows to manifest, and it becomes, and it works, and it starts snowballing, and all of a sudden now you just see this whole destructive path happen in the name of God, and more so it's blasphemy. But still, no matter what, and in the movie, they show that the church tried to cover it up. They tried to seal away the Pope during that time. You see a skeleton, and he was in a cage, and must have swallowed the key. They locked him in because they couldn't exorcise him or nothing. And it's crazy, and it plays on all your fears and all your doubts and all your sins and everything. And I'm just like, you know what? Being where I'm at today, I'm like, there is a sense of truth to that in a sort of way. And that would make more sense why something in a historical sense, why the church would have so much power in that way, or why they would have so much relevancy to that day, is like, we know through also other things of how certain energetic knowledge and gnosis was taken from other areas and how it was perverted. And I don't care to ruffle any feathers in that way to say that the Holy Roman Empire did do that. You know, it did do that. Not saying that the whole thing is evil, but it did do that. It took true esoteric knowledge and turned it exoteric, but also kept it for itself and secret, and
created its own egregore.
Exactly.
That's all it is. And then I think so if you're unaware of the metaphysics, which that's more important, right? Like on how things are working. So if they took the gnosis and they realized we create our own reality, the more thought energy we have on board towards this thing, if we can get people on this thought track and we can instill the fear in this type of energy, then we can control the energy and control the people. And so I would say and it's funny because you're talking about the Dark Ages, right? So the Dark Ages being unaware of how reality works and how the world works. I think the knowledge of the metaphysics proves what you're saying.
It was unchallenged.
They're putting people on a timeline. I get what you're saying. They're putting people on a timeline, the people that are in the dark or NPCs or weak in that moment because of a lack of gnosis. Then they have to ride the roller coaster. Bill Hicks, right? Like life's just a roller coaster, but you're going to get on my roller coaster. And it's fun, and it's this, and it's that, and there's a lot of ups and downs, and whatever, right? His whole thing with that, I love him. And when you said him and Carlin, man, they're my philosophers too. But that's to me is that, and that's what's arising out of the age of Aquarius. The water bearer bringing water being truth is the knowledge of the ether, Aquarius, of the water of truth. And it's just our awareness is simple. And you said this place is simple, right? Like it's a simple fact that everything is a mirror and it is reflecting back to us. But when we didn't know it was a mirror, those in power who knew it was in a mirror could then say, okay, well, this is history and this is what the creator is. And this is what you should believe and this and that. And it gets everyone sucked into that pendulum. And then now you are on this timeline. But then as soon as you pull out, and then you have the ability now to step out and say 10,000 feet in the air, oh, that was just a sector of reality that I was tuned into and my ancestry was tuned into. And now I'm the one that breaks the line and I'm the one that takes my power back. And now that I have the power, we are here talking on this podcast saying, let's share that fucking power. Okay. Right?
Love it. Yep. 100%.
Exactly. Understand the relevance.
Yeah. Right.
That's the thing. Like that's what I'm saying. Like, don't get beyond the relevance of like, even what I just said. Yeah, exactly.
Danger threat thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, don't get
a threat.
Yes.
They want you to think it is. That parts of us that you still respond to because that's the only reason they're there is because you still respond to them. Those parts want you to think that there's a threat around every corner. You're constantly in threat. The reality is that that's not true. Number one, and number two, that perhaps danger exists, but the danger adds a component to this. The danger makes it fun. You need this again. It's back to fun. focusing on the fact that potentials could be manifested in your reality and focusing on those is one way to ensure that what you put a lot of energy in, absolutely. Now, another thing to this that's even more palpable, actually, is think of like the 99% of the conversations you've had in your head of what you were going to tell that person or how you were going to react or what was going to go down and how many of those actually happened, right? And then you think about perhaps reinvesting even just a percentage of that energy into kind words about yourself, into knowing that at any point in your life, especially this one that you're in now, but especially anything behind here, if it's attached to any sort of dissonance in your life currently, if you remember it that way, if you invite that memory into your life to interpret it from your moment of now, pull it out of that box and bring it here. If that's a vibrational thing that you choose to continue to participate in, then absolutely you have it available to you all the time. But in the same sense, you also have the availability to transmute anything here. And so let's say that we go with the idea that it's only you, and not in a selfish way. Like, let's really think about this concept that if there's a bunch of things out here to distract, that job is to present themselves very obviously as something to distract you from yourself, then perhaps they're presented in an obvious way as to be easily overcome, right? Like you guys have already said it, this age of Aquarius, this isn't a squeegee third eye, as Bill Hicks would say. This is the opening of the ability to see. This is what revelation means, is to see, to reveal, right? So if you take it that way, then you say you can see the strings very clearly on the puppet now. You can see the Wizard of Oz behind the thing. Continuing to call it out to people continues to make it real, but the fact that it's real and so obvious is on purpose. It's showing you its strings. We had plenty of times with the feathers. They sent us with plenty of trucks. Finally, it's just like 2 a.m. They're flipping the lights on. Now you can see everything in the club, right? That chick's not that good looking. You know what I mean? The floor is a lot dirtier, you know, and I was just dancing and laying on it. Like those things, you know, and so it's revealed. You can see things very clearly. And so people then, though, some parts of us will I'm observing them have an interesting time with coming to grips with that, with the ego being put into a position to where it needs to admit that it's been lied to and be okay with that, because we're all lied to. It's part of the game. You need to think your character's a certain way to get to this point in the game, is how I see it. And even further to that, nothing existed before you and nothing exists after this present moment. So if you then look at this place from a continuous transporter, you're constantly transporting your consciousness to physical versions of you that are slightly different from this one, in way more alignment, if you want to say that, in a multiverse of options that are infinite. So everything's here, everything's playing out exactly to a constant steady vibration in one universe. But I see it as you're constantly able to shift to one that you're a vibrational match with. You just pick the one you want to go to. If that's the one where you sit there and yell at the TV the whole time rather than take your son fishing, then cool. That one's there, and it's absolutely, you're right, and you'll be right in it, and you'll be justified and vindicated. Then the experience you have from that will be the experience you have from that. But in the same token, everything you want and desire, even superpowers, like everything, is a multiverse option for you if you choose to see it that way. If you see it as infinite, then it is truly infinite. And then you say, well, then what I need to do as a participatory member and a traveler of the multiverse where it's infinite, I need to figure out my fortification, my compass. I've got to get myself in a mental place where I could traverse this thing with it being fortuitous for me rather than damaging, and rather than me feeling like I've made a mistake or that I need to go back to another reality. You get on this trajectory of alignment to where you set a course, and then whatever you engage along that path is part of that path, and you trust that process. There's always going to be options for you guys for all of us to turn around and to feel that way again. But the further you detach from it, I promise, the more ridiculous that idea sounds. Like, you see it as so stupid.
The framework of transurfing was my catalyst for seeing things in principles alongside, like when you were saying before about how when you were talking about certain things and then you start to stoop down to that frequency. Chapter 5, I think, or whatever of transurfing is called an induced transition. So what it says is that when you are on a certain wavelength and you're on your own frequency and something happens in your reality, you have that option. And sometimes if you're not aware, it will induce a transition to a lower frequency. And now you've jumped down a few levels, and now everything on that reality layer, like reality is like a layered cake. And so as soon as you've allowed something in, or you've taken a bite of that piece of reality, you're like, oh, now I'm eating this piece of the cake, right? And so now you're there.
Go ahead. And then what happens? You have to digest that piece. So it takes a minute.
Yes.
And this is what we call the echo in manifestation. So even if you change your mind, you're like, yeah, I've been doing the thing. The echo is there as an opportunity for you to really decide it, because it's going to be your discomfort zone from your perspective. But in that place, that's where that shit is. That's where that magic is, because you are digesting. To stick with the metaphor, it's going to give you diarrhea, and then you sit with that too. And then once that's all clear, you're mindful of what you're bringing into your system as fuel for this vehicle that is a multiverse traveler. And then you just travel wherever the fuck you want, and you do it through consciousness, and it's constant and ever evolving, and it's all the time, and it's fucking awesome.
It's damn beautiful. That's what it is. Absolutely. And it's about empowerment, man. That's why I love your message. Like it is about taking whatever it is you need to grow, and whatever weeds you need to pull, you pull them, and then you move on and you keep tendering to your garden. You got it. That's right. And then you just allow it to grow and grow and grow, and whatever needs to be pulled is done. And that's where most people, like, I guess it's most, if there was any frustration, not putting it out there, but like if there was frustration when you're working with this stuff, is not playing into just, the field of weeds and being there with all the other guys, picking them and saying, I found another one over here and look at the size of my weed, and oh, mine's bigger, and it's like, but you wanted to try to steer people on. And our motto, by the way, is it's not what you think, it's how you think. I could give a shit what you think. I don't care what you think. How did you get to that? Show me your process.
Your insight.
It's the insight that matters most, opposed to, I'm not going to fight about what you think with you, because that's not what I'm here to do. I'm only to talk about how are you getting to that final destination. And if you don't want to talk about it, let's not talk about it. And using that analogy too, most people get on the bus, pay their cheap fee of $3, and instead of me getting and going and earning my own car, my own brain, my own mind, and jumping in that car and driving to the destinations I want to, most people go, well, where's that going? Oh, that's going to Arizona. Well, I wanted to go to Montana, but you know what? Fuck it, I'll just jump on with you, whatever. And that's what most people do. Right? Just why not? Like, let me just jump on and see where this takes me. Which sometimes that sense of adventure can play a very good role. Like, you know what, if I just allow this to take me, sure. But most people, just out of pure laziness and a lack of individuation, say, well, someone drive me wherever. I don't know where I'm going. Like, they don't have the destination in mind. They're not going to seek the adventure of seeing different perceptions for the sake of doing the sightseeing and allowing themselves to see different perceptions. They're just going, well, someone bring me to just the next destination so I can sit back, have a beer, and not pay attention and play and watch my football and do whatever and this and that, and play into the 3D reality and just be there, which is okay, because I'm not here to judge anybody's what they're doing. But on the end of, I'm saying, for the people that are seekers and the people that are doing the spiritual work and all of that, they even do that, is my point. Like, they don't realize that they've allowed the guru to be their bus driver, and sometimes it's okay to be on that bus for a long time, but do you really know where you're going, or are you just abiding to the frequency of that guru or that group of people? It's like in the age of Aquarius, it's all about not being part of the group, but being an individual and playing your part within the group consciousness, opposed to becoming the group consciousness. And it's funny, because that's what Saturn was in Aquarius. That was the pandemic, right? And Aquarius is group mind, group think, hive mind. And Saturn was there to go, I'm going to make you sit in a room and think about, are you thinking your own thoughts anymore, or are you becoming the group? And that's, it's frustrating, because most people talk like as if they're thinking their own thoughts. And a lot of the times you could tell just from the parroting that you hear that it's like, no, you're not. I know exactly where you're getting your information from, and it's no judgment, but it's just a matter of, I won't call it frustration, but that's the challenge we have as, say, people who are trying to spread a message, not wake people up, but spread a message. Gio, you've been quiet. Any thoughts?
Just taking it all in,
right?
And also just thinking that it's this is great for. I Listen, I'm just gonna put it out there and say it, Brandon. You got to come back.
I'd love to be honored, man. You guys are great. This is outstanding. Yeah,
because we've only touched the tip of the iceberg, and I know we're reaching that point and stuff too, and it's only going to get juicier from here. And I love your perspective. I intuitively knew that this is what was going to come, and this has been an idea of ours already to have you on for a while. We just never, we've gone through our own stuff too, and we just never acted upon it. And then it was just like finally one day the impulse hit me, and I was just like, let's
it was on you, Gio. You get to take.
I was like, let's fucking set it up, man. I was like, I'm grateful. I was like, I'm fucking tired of not doing it and not reaching out. Let's do it.
Yep. And then from that one little speck, by the way, for me was I love this guy because when you had it wasn't like because Peter Shampoo is the man, but you were just like he was talking about how they placed all the architecture on the ley lines to harness the negative energy and to steer society, and he was like correct in his it was like I see I know exactly what he's saying, and that's true to an extent. And you go, well, there's the light side to it. And I go,
always.
He's seeing the empowerment to it. He's not just noticing the evil dark side, and I know that Peter means well, but I saw, and I go, that's how I think. This guy's the fucking man. I resonate with this guy.
That's how 1 step forward, 2 steps back is not setback. It's the cha-cha. It's if you fall down the stairs, it's not a travesty. You just get up and you go, holy shit, I went down the stairs really fast. That was great. Like you can alchemize any moment. It's the parents do this with their kids all the time, and the kid falls. You have a moment, you have a split second in there to decide whether they're going to freak out or not. And it's up to you whether that happens. For the most part, you can look at them with a smile on your face. You can remind their parasympathetic nervous system that everything's okay by viewing you as not freaking out. If you're not freaking out, why would they freak out, right? They look for you for validation. So it's an indicator. So in the same way, you can alchemize that moment. You can run over and freak out in a helicopter parent. Then you'll get there's a response and the reaction to that. There's an energy component that's an echo of that choice to be that version of yourself, to exist in that multi-version version of you. But in the same sense, in the exact same moment, there's the ability to alchemize that to where the child now doesn't feel in danger, doesn't feel that this is abnormal, and that it's when it falls, it should be freaked out because if it's going to fall a lot, there's a lot of psychological components that go, and it's just simply two different ways of experiencing the same exact moment. And this happens at a blink of an eye every single time, all the time. And what's more, and what we'll talk about more next time, is perception. We really need to dive into that, where the dudes on the
all about it
either side of the 6 and 9 and arguing and shit. We get perception figured out as a group here, then that's it. It's game over.
Love it.
Big time.
Well, I love you guys. This was outstanding, honestly. And I've sent you a bunch of things in the email. So audience, look forward to that. They're dope ass people. So y'all are going to love those guests.
We appreciate that. We got a lot of work to do. So on top of that. So yeah, man. This is, like I said, this is only the tip of the iceberg. And everybody, if you haven't already, definitely check out Brandon's channel, Expanding Reality. Go to his website. As you can see, as we've been presented, there's a lot of other sources to go to. So definitely check that out. We'll be sure to link it all. Like this video. Comment, give us your hate too. Anything you disagree with,
we'll
go for it.
We'll alchemize it.
I won't respond, I promise.
Right. All right.
Yeah, no, we got a lot more to discuss too. I already see it. There's a lot more to go, and I appreciate you once again taking this time.
Thank you.
Yeah,
grateful. Thank you guys.
All right. Well, on that note, Brandon, much love, brother. And you will be getting an email. And dude, lastly, we'll end on this. Please do yourself the service, and you don't have to, because I'm not trying to project, but reality transurfing has been the greatest paradigm of everything you've said has been totally online. And what a beautiful Aquarian way of putting the way of seeing reality, to know that we have control and we shift, and and it's an empowering book to let you know that you are the creator of your own reality and that we create it together. And it's
I've got it noted, dude. I'm absolutely getting this thing. Absolutely.
1 through 5 reality transurfing, dude. I'll send it to you.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. On that note, On that note, gentlemen, all right, I'm going to log out, and Brandon, let's figure out a day.
Yes,
for next time.
Definitely.
Please.
Definitely.
All right, gentlemen.